just, oh my God, like.
I'm in a delightful mood, by the way. You're getting like peak.
Oh, I'm happy as a clam today because, like,
So,
I mean, Ferrari, you're in the trenches.
Today. Not a lot. Like I'm up for the weekend still because I had a big George full day yesterday that come through for me. So.
I mean, Ferrari, you're in the trench.
I have never been happier after I've lost money in this.
Ferrari, you're in the trenches, which is the only thing that's preventing me from being like completely jubilant. But
you can't be like, okay, but Ferrari in the trenches, but also be like, why the fuck are we even bringing a Silverstone update?
Well,
pick an argument.
What do you mean?
Because your argument is that you give it up on this season and you don't give a shit anymore. So you then can't be that sad about P5 and P6.
First of all, I never said don't bring the Silverstone update. I said I've always been like.
No, you said you literally have said repeatedly, what is the point?
Well, exactly. I think that's a fair argument, but it's just, I think I say bring it so you don't, I literally say in all those videos, bring it so you don't have to suffer like the entire rest of the season. But my point is just on the timing, in that, like, if you truly wanted to be competitive in the way that Fred claims is possible, like, if you're really competing for the championship, you would have needed to bring this upgrade like in the triple header.
Oh yeah, no, you needed to bring that, yeah, before. Honestly, Miami even.
I mean,
like, fundamentally, it doesn't matter.
There's always.
This is Oscar. Are we live yet?
We're live on YouTube. I'm going live on TikTok right now.
Can YouTube actually hear me for once?
Yes, because I put you on my old MacBook, so hopefully.
Nice. Oh. I just want to respect. I just want to respect my YouTube people.
No, and also I
did just go to YouTube and then search YouTube in.
I've done that before. No, and at the end of the season, I want to go back and like edit all my post-race lives together for a season recap. So it's helpful that I wonder if they can't hear the broadcast either. Then that's concerning. Oh well.
Well, let's test it out. I have YouTube playing.
All right, hang on. I'm playing it.
Oh yes, I can. Yes, the people of YouTube can hear me. Yay!
That's good. That is good. Okay, I'm going live on TikTok. Oh.
Which mostly means I can listen back to my terrible takes afterwards.
How flip camera? Okay, I'm always on the wrong freaking camera. No, today was a beautiful day.
Jordan Spieth did pretty well at the Open. Oh, remind me, I need to rant about this. I need to bitch about the IndyCar people. Okay.
They did not like my video earlier today. Let me tell you that right now.
Oh my God, but I need to bitch about them. I'm really mad at the IndyCar people for being dumbasses, okay?
But them crashing.
We'll do the right stuff first.
But them crashing out all over again about the scheduling conflict. I'm like, you realize that you're proving the exact point that I was making in this video, right? Because
right. But also, I'm just going to preview this now. Getting the Canadian Grand Prix off of the U.S. Open weekend, the U.S. Open Golf weekend, is actually significantly more meaningful for F1 than going against the Indy 500.
Well, and it just makes sense, like, in terms of like the actual logistics of Formula One, because it's kind of stupid for them to go to Miami, go back to Europe for 2 to 3 races, and then go back to Canada. You know what I mean?
So Canada shouldn't be Memorial Day weekend. It should be the weekend after Memorial Day weekend. But what they need to actually do is move Miami a week later.
Yeah.
Miami should not be Kentucky Derby weekend.
No, I've always said the fact that and especially the way they're trying to sell Miami as like clearly part of like the billionaires calendar, quote unquote, right? And but they put it this.
Anytime Tom Brady goes to the Kentucky Derby and not the F1 race is a failure event.
Well, and like Kentucky Derby's on Saturday, so like for the first couple, like a bunch of people have flown in after Kentucky to Miami, but like, how many times are they going to do that if these people like going to care to do that once the novelty wears off? Because like, it's not like these people are truly Formula One fans, you know what I mean?
And also, all the good parties are fucking Friday night anyways.
Right. And well, also it's like when you're trying to split the weekend, I feel like you kind of it's you get the worst of both worlds because you're missing a lot of the accoutrement of both, shall we say. Yes,
Right,
I
exactly.
people are very excited for Kimmy. I'm excited for Kimmy too. Great. I mean, W weekend for Mercedes. And
Have
like,
you told people, by the way, that you have a guest this week?
yes, I said it in my video.
Oh, nice.
Let me
Well, see, the thing is, I can't watch your video because I'm live with you right now.
I know, and it takes so long to upload and edit and film and stuff. Kimmy
What we need to do moving forward, we're just doing the editing. Hi, by the way, I'm here again.
Yes, Evan is with
Uh,
us.
what we need to do is you need to let me listen to you record your videos.
Oh my god. I mean, you can if you want to. That's a humiliation ritual. The amount of times I have to redo each clip because I'm stuttering. Too many. Too many.
Counterpoint. At some point, just fuck. I don't like. I would just say fuck it. I don't care.
Sometimes I do that, honestly, more often than not. And it depends. There are some videos where like I legit can't get through it. It's because I know what it is. Once I start stuttering, then I'm like anxious about it and I'm thinking about it. And so it happens more and more and more. So like once it happens
once it gets in your head, for
exactly.
sure.
Like whereas I'll go through a whole video, be totally fine. And then oh, what do you think? Someone brought up George brake checked Max at then. I don't think he brake checked him because he wasn't directly in front of him, but he was absolutely playing games trying to get him to overtake up under the safety car. But
So it's possible that's what George is doing. It's also
take up under the safety car. But
it's possible that's what George is doing. It's also possible George realized that he needed to hit a delta time.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I assume it was because one, Max and George were good with each other in the cool down.
They were well behaved this weekend. Well, I also don't think that playing safety games behind the safety car is like that big of a deal. Like they all do that.
No, and I think the Occam's razor answer is George needed to make a delta time. Max didn't know that George was going to break to meet a delta time. And then, but like neither, like the thing is, the FIA might be crude and pedantic, not going to actually fuck a like safety car race order.
Yeah. Well, especially because Max like reacted as quickly as he could to like stay behind. So even if he edged
like remember last year when they kept noting
oh my god, Nico doing the
posters unnecessarily slowly in qualifying and then they just totally stopped doing it.
Yeah, they were like
they realized that every time somebody did that, it was to avoid hitting somebody. We're gonna stop making people think that this is an issue and like, oh, their driver might get a penalty when they quite literally never gave one out for driving unnecessarily slowly.
Yeah. Well, it's also yeah, exactly. Nico, hang on, we're gonna listen to Nico in his suede brown jacket. I know what you are. Yesterday I almost tweeted he was wearing like his little flower jean jacket that he's worn a couple times, white pants, and then he had like these denim shoes that perfectly matched the jacket. And I wanted to tweet I know what you are, but I was scared people were going to think I was homophobic because I was stoned and overthinking it. So I was like, okay, like the dark gray suits are so much nicer than the light ones.
Oh, for sure. Also, can you just pause this?
Yes.
One point to make. Because I watched all the interviews beforehand. George has absolutely learned from the Lewis school of congratulate your teammate, congratulate the people back to the factory.
Oh yeah, he hits all the talking points.
Answer, no matter what you are asked about how great the team is. That answer could have been given by Lewis Hamilton, and I know that because he gave that answer about George about 7 times when they were teammates.
Yeah, it's so funny. They could ask them like literally anything. Like the first question could be like, "So, like, you pulled out a gun and shot someone on track. Like, what was that about? And they're like, I just really like to thank the team.
But it's so funny because Lewis is the master at that.
No,
And
Lewis
George
is
is
what Lewis
George is just doing a charity bit at this point.
it's kind of a it's kind of funny. It's because that wraps into a larger skill that Lewis has, which is like such a fundamental PR skill. And he's so good at it, which is you don't have to answer the question they asked you. Answer the question you want to answer. And like if you're nice enough about it, you like people won't even notice. And it's so smart. But also, which like
we're running a coup in Canada, Canadian politics, coup of one of our leaders, and I literally had to yell at people about this week of like, stop answering the questions you were asked. Every answer just needs to say the words, stronger Liberal Party to defeat Doug Ford. That's it. Fuck what the question is.
yeah, dude,
that's your answer.
You don't have to.
Answer doesn't include this. You have failed.
You gotta learn how to pivot.
Thank the team. Thank the factory. Thank the fans. That's it. That's all he's gonna do.
Hi, guys. A good sign for them that it was hot though, and they still did this well.
For sure. Also, Nico just very, very obviously cheering for Mercedes is one of my favorite things.
Yeah. His and Toto's dynamic is like my Roman Empire, truly.
Also, for everybody who was decrying Hannah Spence as some, idiot who needs to be fired, quite a good rebel strategy this weekend.
Yeah, it's almost like she's really good at her job.
Yeah, it's almost as if a 3-stop and then a late safety car is something that you can't actually plan for.
Yeah, it's almost. Oh, Kimmy. It's nice that it's Nico too, because like I think they know each other. That's how I feel about Ollie. Some people said I cheer on Kimmy like he's my firstborn son. Like, but he is. It also is so funny to me whenever he rocks up because it's always like two full grown adults and like a child. Like the leap that because he looks like a kid, but like most of them sans Oscar are like have made that leap like over 25 that men do where they like start looking like adults at like it's usually like 24 to 27 I would say is like the window, and they've all done that, so it's like here are these two grown men and like a 15-year-old, like they make him look even younger. Oh my god, the UK got Celsius, huge. Yes, I have a problem, I will say. What's funny is that Celsius is a Ferrari sponsor, but it's illegal in Europe.
Oh,
Which is how you know it's the good shit. Hang on, this camera is. There we go. What a cutie pie. This place.
oh my God. So the really funny thing, thank God, this race is in Montreal and not in like Toronto or whatever. Kim Antonelli is legal to get drunk tonight.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Because Quebec's legal drinking age is 18, Ontario's 19, most of Canada, I believe, is 19.
Really? I had no idea. I thought it was all 18. But also, I've
No.
only.
Well, so the thing is, I literally spent most of my year as an 18-year-old just buying booze for my friends who were 17. Because you know, first I was doing that when I was fucking 15 because I had a beard. I was 6'4" from like the age from when I turned like 15. So I've never been carded in Quebec in my life.
I spent the year I was 18 getting drunk in a field.
We did that at Canada Day in Canada in 2013. It was the first time I got drunk. I was 16. My brother bought me a Mickey of whiskey, and I drank the entire thing straight.
We
The
would
fact
always.
that I didn't just stop at McDonald's and buy myself a Coke and just mix it is proof that I was an idiot who didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah, we would go camping, and that was like how we like partied and stuff. Okay, hang on, gotta watch the cool down room. I forget it started.
Oh, the cool down room is incredible.
I love watching that they make them watch the highlights now. That's a critical evolution. And I also love the helmet like displays. That's another evolution that I am a fan of. Oh, so they don't like they have the little in the cool down room, the little stands to put them on, and they have a cutout in the wall. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the moment. Oh! Yeah, shout out Moe. They've done a good job with the cool down room. Oh, it's about to happen. The cameraman moving around to capture their facial expressions better because he knows what's coming is sending me.
Just incredible. Was it George who mentioned Lewis and Jensen crashing in the same spot, essentially?
Oh yeah.
Kimmy being like, I didn't know who to give the slipstream to. Just Max just looking like, how the fuck am I losing a championship to these people? Oh, iconic for all three of them.
Max makes this facial expression. Oh, you can't see me. It's like eyebrows raised, like, oh.
It is absolute contempt for the fact that he is losing a championship to these two people.
George saying there's not really a gap there. Understatement of the century.
Every time I watch, so can we talk about Oscar? So George Russell, you're amazing. You are a legend in the moment. You are everything. I love you. Fantastic, great job. Right, love you, man. You're my driver. Can we talk about how Oscar? This is, I think, the most concerning Oscar Piastri race of the season so far.
Yeah, not being able to get.
How the fuck did you not give me an alley?
Tough.
Very fucking tough.
Well, it's also so funny because hang on, let me find the exact tweet. Dev sent it to me.
I love Dev, by the way.
She's the best. She's my favorite F1 TikToker, including myself. But so she sent me That's why you have so this McLaren fan, presumably a Lando Norris fan, said that's why you have team orders. Piastri couldn't catch a fucking rookie and ruined both of our races. It was clear who the faster driver was. You have to prioritize one, or you both lose out. Okay, but the fact that you think that Lando Norris, who qualified behind and then was behind in the race and is also behind in the world championship, is going to be the one to get priority is an insane level of delusion. And also, like, if there were going to be team orders, it would have been hold position to let, because like the reason Oscar really didn't have, I mean, he had one lap where he couldn't pass. It was bad, don't get me wrong, but like he very quickly was dealing with the Lando situation rather than pushing Kimmy. So like it's ironic to me that that's what the Lando fans are arguing, because it's like, okay, but if there was going to be team orders, like it would have been to hold position as, but also the whole like, okay, like you go ahead and try, and then like we'll switch back, and like I'll go. That bullshit only works when you're in the midfield trying to get the best. You know what I mean? Like once I think McLaren is doing it the right way, which is like they're like, listen, we're at the front of the grid now. All the gloves are off. That you have to, when you both have a chance for a championship, I do think you have to let them fight, because while you are gonna lose out in situations like this, I feel like you also lose out a lot in maybe some more non-qualitative non-quantitative rather ways by doing the whole position and doing whatever, because also it's so early to start doing that shit, that because once you lose control of that situation, you've lost control, right? So it's, and also people are
Also,
like,
McLaren have a 175-point lead in the championship as the constructors, and
right.
both of the drivers are 1-2 in the standings. Like this is like literally textbook. We aren't getting involved in bigger bullshit.
Exactly. And also, like, how about Lando doesn't drive into the back of him? Like, that wasn't even like like chippy racing. Like, he just, I really don't know. I would love to hear what the thought process was behind that.
Oh, I've seen Lando's interview. He doesn't explain it because it doesn't exist.
No,
So
he fully capitulates, which, like, credit to
it's
him.
the U.S. Open. I was watching multiple things. I was looking at my phone to track a different golf or whatever. So I didn't see what happened. And I assumed when I just saw that Lando was fucked, I was like, oh, that, like, did Oscar do something? And then we finally see the replay. And I'm like, oh no, Lando just like completely forgot how to drive for a second. This is what?
Yeah.
I hate to bring this up, but is this the biggest like unforced error from a top team driver since, or not even top team driver, but from like a good driver since what, George just like completely for no reason crashing into Valtteri in Imola 2021?
Did Baku happen before or after that? If so, Baku, I would say, or that one, or
Lewis in
at the first corner on the restart. That was a pretty huge.
Okay, fine. So yeah, it's Lewis then. Okay, yeah.
That was
Like, this is the point.
I mean, they all make unforced
Away 10 points for no reason, for a gap that never existed. And by the way, if you really wanted to get frisky, you could have just gone to the right and probably gotten alongside him. Right. But then, I mean, you were never getting him on the outside, but you know, you could have at least made him faint to defend you.
Yeah. I mean, they all make unforced errors sometimes. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm a Sebastian Vettel fan. I could never beguile anyone that. But it was probably Max on George. Oh, I don't think that was an error, Hannah. I think that was a bad decision, but a very clearly a decision that Max Verstappen made. But they, again, not a good one, but yes, an error in judgment. But I here's the thing. Like, I've always said that, like, I think that the way that Lando reacted to everything around Danny Rick when he was like, what, like, not even just beating him, like Danny Rick was in the fucking trenches and like Lando was doing great, and he still like had to have like an attitude over Monza and all this stuff. And I was like, I said in that moment, I was like, the minute he has a teammate that's beating him, he's gonna melt down. And I think we're kind of starting to see that. But then again, it's early in the season. There's a lot of race to be run yet.
This was the 10th race of the
Yeah.
season. Can we keep saying it's early in the
I
season?
mean, it's the first. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so we're like almost halfway. I would say.
But like this is so Oscar has 5 race wins, Lando has 2, I believe.
Damn, I didn't realize it was that fast.
Sorry, Max Verstappen has as many race wins as Lando Norris. George Russell, you know, like the thing about Lando, right, is that yeah, it's close because he has most of Lando's errors outside of this have been Saturday errors, right? Saturday errors are less meaningful than Sunday ones because
Especially in that car.
On a Saturday, you can rally back on a Sunday. Oscar couldn't come back from his error in Australia, but since then, Piastri has basically driven error-free ball, right? He was slow this weekend. I don't really know why, but
I'm hoping that it's the regulation changes, like the floor and the wing flexibility, like slowly catching up to them. But
if that's the case, that's not good for Lando because Lando's only hope is that he basically just gets 3 1-2s in a row over Oscar, and then that because if you're picking up 7 points a race weekend, you build that gap a lot faster than if you're only getting 2 points, which is what Oscar should have gotten over Lando this weekend, right?
yeah.
And a 22-point, a 22-point gap isn't everything by any means, but unless Oscar's gonna get a DNF here, it was a 33-point gap that Lewis was facing coming into Silverstone in 2021. And people were talking about he needs a massive, dash of luck here to fix it. He got it in luck. He got it by crashing Max out at Cops.
I mean, to be fair, that is luck because anytime you hit someone, you have no idea what the end result of that.
You might also be totally fucked as well.
Exactly.
All right, I don't know why I'm throwing so much. I mean, I do. I'm drunk, but whatever.
But they, yeah, I mean, when do Max's penalty points start coming off the board? It's a while, isn't it?
After Austria, because his first penalty points are for crashing Lando out in Austria 24, which lets George win that race, of course.
Shout out to Max for that one. Okay, so I feel like maybe with a race ban, it's not possible, but I also feel like it's kind of the same way I felt about it last season, which is that I know Max is gonna come in and be good every single weekend. You know what I mean? He'll hang around. It's just I
think you need a double. I think you need a double McLaren DNF. I think if I would feel a lot better about Max's chances if Oscar hadn't stayed in the race.
Yeah, and Oscar has been solid.
If Oscar had also DNF, then Max would have basically just wiped out his Spain penalty would have essentially just been wiped out with this result, right? But the problem is just reliability is too good for you to think this, and so you need crashes. But hey, if the McLarens are going to get racy with each other, it's not impossible.
That's true. I also think that this weekend really showed me that Matt, regardless of what he may be saying to the press, Max fully locked in this weekend and was like, all right, no funny business. I'm going to get a podium and I'm going to actually get the points I need to get and move along with my day. So I also think that it really does depend on Oscar.
I also think people have, and this is the one time I will say, newer DTS fans or whatever, I fully am one of those people. I think we forget that, you used to be able to win a championship by winning, 5 of 21 of, 19 races.
Yeah. Well, there used to be more
reliability. I get that.
But also more team, you're when you're thinking about those 2000 Seb's era of dominance, it really wasn't until the Merc dominance era where there were if there's only 1.5 teams in it, you're going to be winning more. Whereas like when there's four teams, all, even if some of those teams aren't necessarily in the championship fight consistently enough to, I mean, in the fight consistently enough to be in the championship fight, you're you're still pulling those wins away from each other. So like you can win with less. Whereas like when you're in the situation that McLaren or Max, or when there's one to maybe two teams at the top, you really do need to be pulling in with that consistency every single weekend. And I mean, I feel like
But if the state technical directive has sort of pulled McLaren back closer to the pack, this isn't just an aberration. It could just be an aberration. But like George can win a race if the car's good that weekend. Charles obviously can. You know, Lewis was certainly pretty good in quali yesterday. I think that was probably about as good as that Ferrari could have been in quali. Obviously, he killed the hedgehog and or groundhog, and
oh, poor thing.
couldn't do anything. But like, you got to think that between George, Charles, Kimi, and Lewis, you don't have to think. It's totally plausible that there's 4 to 5 race wins the rest of the season between those 4 drivers, and so that that is a real sort of factor in this. And 4 race wins the rest of the stretch could get you there. And the other thing is, even if George only wins 1 more race this year, right? And I think we can pretty much pencil in Mercedes are probably going to win Vegas, right? Because cold temperatures, we know that that's the window that they operate in, yada yada. Like, if you're Max, and we're talking about sort of Max's chance of sort of crashing this McLaren party, every time that you can get George and Kimi, or George and Charles, or George and Lewis, or Charles and Lewis, or Charles and Kimi, or whatever, between him and Oscar, that becomes a pretty significant points haul. And if all the cars are kind of similar-ish.
Wait, did Lewis get this damage by hitting a groundhog? Am I reading this?
That is apparently what has happened, yes.
Oh, so everyone's like, Lewis was devastated about that poor groundhog.
I'm sure he feels terrible.
That's so sad.
But this was, I think, a very encouraging weekend for Lewis. He was,
No, he did well.
4/10 off the pole position. The car is very clearly not good enough. There's a big upgrades package coming for Ferrari, which isn't going to win them a championship. But I mean, I think it's still obviously true that Ferrari have the most talented driver pairing on the grid.
Oh, right? Don't say that to Twitter.
Well, Twitter can here's the thing. I like making fun of Lewis to you because you understand that I'm joking.
Yeah, and I understand that I get triggered every time and give you exactly the reaction that you want to get.
I would stop doing it if you stop getting so very easily triggered by it.
Also, wait, okay, someone quote tweeted my video of Lando with this person, so that it's a screenshot of a tweet that said the most overrated non-champion in F1 history. I'm being dead ass, but I'm pretty sure that this tweet was talking about Charles, because I think I blocked this person because of it. And they said sit, period. Is that, do we know what that means?
I think that means that person is a therapist. By the way, can we talk about the fact that on formulawhatever.net, there is an article called In Defense of Standards written by yours truly about how we need to treat Lando Norris. If people want to claim that Lando Norris is a future world champion, we need to hold him to a standard. And if you actually hold him to that standard, his 2024 season completely falls off a cliff and looks way worse.
No, it's...
Can we talk about the fact that I reread that piece last night, and it is one of the best things that I have ever written, and I've been writing like daily on the internet for like 5 fucking years now?
No, it is amazing, and you're so right for that. But
you're also a coward and won't read it.
I am absolutely a coward. I have just stopped receiving like daily threats against my person from Lando Norris fans for that t-shirt, which I thought was fucking hilarious. And other people, listen, and here's my thing, like, obviously in posting that, I know what I'm doing. Like, talk your shit, yell at me all you want, but like, does it need to rise to the level of being like, I'm gonna fucking find you? Like, what is going on? And I don't even really blame it. It's called this article is called In Defense of Standards on formula.whatever.net. Sorry, someone asked. But I'm like, and I don't, it's really not even Lando Norris fans. Like, this is true of every single fandom, even beyond F1. Like, there's always going to be a minority of weirdos. And I do hate when people act like it is specifically because of like they're like, oh, like, of course, the like whatever insert driver fans here are like sending so and so death threats because of this. And I'm like, unfortunately, once you get a like every single time in a fandom that is of a substantial size, like that's just going to happen. And I don't know what we do or like how we fix it, but I certainly know that it isn't acting like it's a moral reflection on the person that they're a fan of.
For sure. And like I think moralizing Lando's role in this is absolutely nonsensical.
Yes, but I am scared. I am scared of the Lando people. I will say. I will say. No, it's so true.
But the problem with Lando fans, I will say the thing that you can't say in public, which is a lot of Lando's fans are not sports fans first. And so they view criticism of Lando Norris in a way that's very different than sports fans, than people who are predominantly sports fans do. And the thing about Lando, fundamentally, is he's good. He's, top half of the grid in talent for sure.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Done some impressive things. But the problem is that when you are talking about like elite talent, like being you're a Patriots fan in football, right? Like, the difference between the ninth best quarterback in football and the best quarterback in football, or even the third best quarterback in football, is way bigger than the difference between the ninth best quarterback and the 30th best quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And that is that distinction between being like seventh, eighth, or ninth, and first, second, or third is the difference between champions and not champions, right?
Yeah. No,
Lando Norris doesn't have it. Whatever that je ne sais quoi that makes world champions, Charles has it, right? And even if you go back to the Sauber days with Charles, even if you go back to the Sauber days, was it Brazil where it was a wedding track and they wanted him to pit and he wasn't going to make Q3 and he says, fuck that.
Yeah.
I'm running, I'm just going to do one more lap, and he like pops in like P8 or some nonsense. George, you've got Secure, you've got when he put it on the front row in Belgium, when he put it at Q3 in Russia. Like, we know that those guys are real. We know Piastri is real. We know that some of those guys, Lando ain't that guy. He just ain't that guy. And that's fine. He's a very good driver. He's this generation's Danny Rick. He's this generation's Bottas. That's fine. He's an underqualified number one driver. He's an overqualified number two. He's actually hilariously.
Valtteri Bottas was not an overqualified number two driver.
Fine. Okay, fine. He's Mark Webber. He's the Mark Webber reject.
Okay.
He is the Mark Webber of this generation.
I would say, that's a better.
If you want to pretend that he's a world champion caliber talent, then you need to be judged against actual world champions.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And against that standard, he fucking fits.
No, I agree. He absolutely unfortunately for Lando, I just don't think it's going to happen for him.
Seb, didn't Seb win a race in his first full season in F1 in a Toro Rosso?
Yes, he won Monza and he qualified on pole and won from pole in a Toro Rosso at a wet race in Monza. It was one of the crazier things a person has ever done.
Didn't he crash into Mark Webber in Japan when he was in a Toro Rosso for like a podium position?
Yeah, he was in P3, Mark was in P2. And then he crashed into the back of him under safety car. But in his defense,
Hamilton was teammates against the two-time defending world champion in a car that Kimi Räikkönen couldn't win a fucking race in the year before, by the way. And somehow came P2 in the championship and beat Fernando Alonso. There are levels to this shit.
Yeah, no, and I will say, like, it ended up he got fucked on his outlap, so he ended up getting P2 in his first race, not P1. But him overtaking Race 1, corner 1, 2007. He goes around the outside of Fernando Alonso. It's like not anything special as a move, but it's to me one of the most iconic moves in Formula 1 because it's like start as you mean to go on, you know?
Charles in Bahrain in 2019, right?
Oh,
Like if we want to, if we want to extend it, if we want to use like time at a big team, right? He would have won his second race in a Ferrari if his engine didn't just completely shut down,
oh,
right?
I know.
George Russell walks into a car that literally isn't seated to fit him, right?
Yeah.
On the front row is like, 4/100 behind Valtteri Bottas, steals his soul at turn one, steals his soul on the restart, and is gonna win if not for a puncture, right? There are fucking levels to
Yeah,
this.
they did their best too to that's
Verstappen won his first race in a Red Bull.
yes. You listen.
Valtteri Bottas and Kimi Räikkönen.
But like to me that's the argument against Oscar less I mean Lando too, but like
Okay, but Oscar's going to win this championship because he's in the fastest car, and then he's going to be this generation's Jenson Button, which is the trivia question of how the bleep did that guy win a championship?
hey, let's be nice to Jensen. I
Let's I'll be nice to Jensen when Jensen contends for a singular second championship.
I mean he did well. To be fair, he did well in McLaren. He beat Lewis one of the seasons, but like McLaren was just entering their flop era in that moment. But I mean,
I like Jensen, but like I'm just kidding.
I will say, I've always said though, like that is true that going to the right places and like picking the right team and like that is part of being an F like the business and the politics of it is also part of being an F1 driver, you know what I mean? And I would argue a fairly important part.
The number of people who treat Lewis or who treat Fernando as like, well, no, you have to treat Fernando as like a top driver. No, we don't. Because the number of people who think Fernando is better than Seb is just like, oh, innate racing skill or whatever. Like, okay, 4 championships to 2 and about half of the race wins. I'm sorry, you don't get to claim Fernando's better.
Well, it's also
like, but he didn't have a race winning car. Yeah, he didn't have a race winning car because he pissed off everybody in F1 to the point where nobody would give him a top drive. Seb Vettel put in his contract at Ferrari that Ferrari were not allowed to hire Fernando as a teammate.
that's so funny. No, I
by the way, that's not a conspiracy.
No, I know.
Literally says it on, I want to say it's like a Spa broadcast from like 2017.
No, and Martin Brundle's mad about it too.
Well, because they're talking because Fernando's like, because they're talking about like, oh, Fernando's so talented, and where would he go? And it's like, well, he's obviously not taking Valtteri's seat at Mercedes. Obviously, Red Bull quite like their driver lineup because this was Matt Danny Rick, right, at the time.
Yeah.
And then he's like, and Seb, Seb has a clause in his contract that they're not allowed to make Fernando his teammate.
That's so funny.
So he's stuck with the GP2 engine, right? The McLaren Honda engine. And it's like, I'm sorry, seeing everybody in the paddock off to the point where you can't get a good drive is part of the job.
I mean, he did like people argue it's like that he won Le Mans, and it's like, okay, that is a great accomplishment, but also like
doesn't Arthur Leclerc have a Le Mans title? No, Antonio Giovinazzi, sorry.
Well, and
apologies to the failed Ferrari driver development, Ferrari driver academy driver.
It's also like it's like number one, like Seb and Lewis have never like tried to do Le Mans, but also, I guess it's so funny to me when people argue like you put it perfectly, like the pure driving essence, because I'm like, okay, did you put them in a magical chamber that like measures their what are they? It's not metachlorian levels like in fucking Star Wars. Like that's not how it works. Like you have to. Like you can't say who's the best driver because then you get into the dumb argument over like different series and different whatever where it's like, okay, is a sprinter a better runner or is a marathon runner a better runner? Those seem like two completely different things to me and pretty dumb to have that apples to oranges conversation. But it's like we're talking about Formula 1. We're talking about the best Formula 1 driver, and there all of the factors that go into Formula One are also part of being a good Formula One driver. I know. I'm so happy for Robert Kubica, though. Also, Davide on F1 TV today. The girls are up.
Yeah, no, I mean Kubica like is one of the great F1 like or motorsports generally, but F1 sort of what is and like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like Kubica has a bad reputation because George Russell just like waxed him as a rookie at Williams, but it's like I feel like for a certain kind of fan that is the only thing they know about Kubica, and it's like oh, so he's just like in the Latifi sort of like
Oh my God, no.
but no, or the like Marcus Ericsson got beat by Charles sort of thing. It's like absolutely not. Kubica is a talent that we absolutely need to respect. I'm very happy you got that win.
I know. I'm really happy too. And they're, of course, is like not a joke in WEC. Like they won the race that I went to last year too.
No, it's very good. It's very. I'm very happy for it. The thing that I keep coming back to is this race. Like, so obviously super happy for Antonelli, right? Like that's an incredible.
Yeah.
You know, we've been waiting for this kind of Antonelli result for a little while now, right? Like a proper. I think he was only like 4 and something seconds behind George before the safety.
Yeah, he was
right?
doing really well.
That's the kind of result that we've been waiting for Antonelli to have, right? Like on relatively close to George's pace, you know, could fight with the big boys. Very good defense on Piastri the couple of times that Piastri got close, right? Like that is the performance from Antonelli. That is the kind of performance that explains why it was so high on him. Also, I have to say, so did you saw the Ferrari rumors this week? The Charles has lost faith in Ferrari stuff, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So can we take a moment? Can we just take a brief second? Yes, it is technically true that Mercedes has not extended George Russell's contract yet. That is a factually accurate statement. Do you genuinely believe that that is because they're not going to extend George Russell, or because they are waiting to announce George Russell's extension?
No, they're waiting to announce it. I don't think anyone nobody is going anywhere until after 2026.
Correct. Because the thing is, like, so do you remember where they announced Kimi to replace Lewis last year?
Italy, right?
It was Monza.
Yeah.
What's in 2 races?
Yeah, Silverstone. They're gonna do it there.
If they don't announce George Thursday of Silverstone week, I will be moderately concerned that they don't have a deal in place.
I would also say that like I actually don't
very obviously they're going to announce it there.
Yeah,
right?
and someone said the only thing Merck would be waiting on is if Max is going to be available, and I actually kind of like. I think that Toto would. I think he would fuck.
I don't even think Toto would do it at this point.
I think he would because of his psychosexual obsession with Christian Horner, but
but the thing is that Horner would just immediately sign George, and then it's like if George ends up being better, Toto would kill himself.
I also think that my main opinion is that nobody's going anywhere until after 26. And even if Charles has like quote unquote lost faith in Ferrari, I think that the reason all of that, my reading of the tea leaves, which obviously this is an interpretation, but people shit on the Italian tabloids like for good reason, but my perspective on them is that it's not what they're saying isn't necessarily true, but I view it as the mouthpiece of like the great entity of Ferrari, whatever that means to you, whoever you think it is, like whether you think it's Elkin or Vigna or who some other shady behind the scenes character we have no idea about. I find it a useful barometer to measure what the great nebulous entity is thinking and feeling. And so to me, clearly they're trying to throw I agree that they maybe are putting pressure on Fred, but also it makes sense. I don't think it's necessarily about the end of this year, although that's like what it was that like people because firing everybody right before 2026, like would that really make sense? I think next year is make or break for the current Ferrari regime, which is unfortunate. But I think that that was Charles being like, if Fred goes, I go.
I think it's about. I don't know if it's necessarily loyalty to Fred, though. Obviously, they have their relationship because Fred was the team principal in Sauber for many years, including when Charles was there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I just
I
think,
think it's more. I think it's more so like I don't think Charles is gonna be here for another 5 years of misery.
yeah, I think,
Whether
yeah,
I don't think that means this year. I think Charles is smart enough to know that like the championship is lost this year, and there's anything they can do to fix this, like moving forward. But I mean, theoretically, so the thing is, the big sort of dominoes to fall. At some point, you got to think Aston is going to end this Lance Stroll bullshit.
well,
Right?
that's what I think.
They've got a massive new wind tunnel. They spent all of this money outside of the cost cap to make themselves a more serious organization. At some point, you have to believe. At some point, Aston is going to end this charade of treating Lance Stroll like he is actually a good F1 driver.
I also think, yeah, number one, I think it's one thing to have that be happening when you're like at the back of the midfield. I think that if Aston becomes good, which I don't know that they will immediately, but like I think that in the long term they probably will because that's happened every single other time Adrian Newey's gone to a team and I see no reason to think it won't happen again. But I think I could see that happening. Whereas, and also, it's two factors. Number one, nobody's paying attention to Aston Martin right now. I mean, they are, but they aren't, you know? If they get good, that, and not only is the gap going to be exacerbated, but it's going to be a lot more focus on that disparity. And also, if you have, say, in 27, maybe 28, you have a Charles, a Max willing to jump ship, that's a lot harder to justify than like, keeping like when it's like, say, I mean, I don't think this will happen, but say Max wants to jump with Newey. And you're gonna keep Lance and not Max Verstappen. I mean, they could fire Fernando, I guess, but I feel like that's gonna be harder and harder to justify. And I also think the problem
But
might
when is Lawrence Stroll selling a controlling interest?
well, and that's the thing. It is about like when he plans on I think that if they start to get better, it's also possible Lance will just like retire because he
So my working assumption is that they're waiting for that because there was the rumors that Lawrence Stroll wanted to sell his controlling stake in Aston to the Saudis last year. And then I think what happened, I have no zero proof for anything I'm about to say, totally conspiracy screwshell here, is that they realized they could get Newey. And they were like, if Newey provides me a race winning car in 2026, even just Fernando wins his first race since 2013, that's it. I can get double from the 70s what I was going to get if I sold
exactly. Exactly.
And so they're just waiting for Newey to provide a decent car. He'll sell. The second the 70s are there, Lance Stroll is immediately auto fired. And they're basically just auditioning Max, Charles, George, Kimmy, Oscar, Lando. Name whatever driver signs whoever you think is good for that second seat. And just basically going down the list and being like, hey, do you want $75 million? Do you want $75 million? Do you want until somebody says yes?
This is my vision for the future. Max, Charles, Aston teammates, race winning car, championship battle.
Charles would look very, very good in those green Aston.
He would.
Bruce.
He would. I mean, obviously, I hope that Ferrari gets their shit together next year and like this isn't a problem, but
I think for what we know about the engines, that's not happening.
Just based on every single thing that's ever happened. You know what I mean? Like,
I love your Ferrari fandom. It's so
Would
funny.
you even call it fandom? I'm like a prisoner in their basement. Like that's really,
The
really.
Stockholm syndrome is real, yes.
I well, and my thing is just like, yeah, and I also think, but circling back to the Charles and Fred thing, I think it's less about his loyalty to Fred, although I do think that like he believes in the direction Fred is trying to go. I think it's more about he understands that getting rid of like the problem goes much deeper than that, and that the and that firing Fred like just we just are starting the cycle again at the beginning. But
Yeah.
I think he was happy to see like Bonotto was adding to the problem. I don't know that Fred is adding to the problem. I don't know if he's solving it, but I always go back to it. There were a couple of reports like right around the time that Fred was um becoming team principal, like at the beginning of that season, where they were talking because Vina became CEO in 2021. So like a little bit prior to Fred coming around, and they got into an early dispute about sponsorship because Fred as team principal wanted to control, or he wanted to bring on a sponsor, and like he's not in charge of the sponsors, and he and Vina didn't want to give up that control as CEO, which A is very interesting in the Adrian Newey discussion because they very much the Italian media, who again we have to remember is often a mouthpiece for the great entity of Ferrari, and also was basically openly doing it in that case because in the Newey case, um, serving as the mouthpiece, very much put
Sorry,
the
sorry. I have breaking news for you that you will find deeply hilarious.
what?
Nico Rosberg just revealed on Sky Sports that he had written a message to Lando Norris offering him guidance for mentoring, and Lando didn't reply.
Great, Nico. Oh, sometimes he's so cringe. You know what? He's earnest. He's earnest, and you can't say that. But like, a girl, get it together.
I just, I mean, Lando very obviously needs somebody to coach him through this shit, and I don't know if anyone has been like has had to deal with the mental side of this more than Nico.
Yeah, but Lando's is like too cool for Nico because Nico is he is almost the anti Danny Rick in that it's very interesting to me when the matrix of like social hierarchy within the F1 drivers, like really the F1 bubble, like as a whole, the like social hierarchy of it all is pretty directly tied to your uh like your results, like how good you were, right? And except Danny Rick really outkicks his coverage on that, and Nico is like the opposite, in which they're like everyone's like, I do think he earned a lot more respect than he would have had otherwise. Like he did himself good by winning, but it's so funny because it's like all of them bar Jensen definitely like make fun of Nico Rosberg all the time.
It is funny, but like it's just like Lando is very obviously like I don't want to say I don't I there's no polite way to say this, but like it's very obviously a mental problem for Lando, right?
Yeah,
The
and
damage
like
is done mentally
and
by.
people are like, "Oh, like I feel like people conflate that with him like struggling with his mental health." And I'm like, "Those are two completely separate things." Like you can have mental health like the your racing mentality, although undoubtedly probably affected by your mental health, really is kind of divorced from your mental health. And I think that Lando, you can see it in, oh, sorry, I have to do the puzzle piece. Um You can see it in as early as Russia 2021, right? Like he's prone to a meltdown, and I say that as someone prone to a meltdown myself. And I think, well, and we don't know, maybe he'll pull it back together, you know what I mean? But it kind of seems like we're starting to see the beginning of that, in that like Oscar's beating him, and instead of just locking in and doing what he needs to do, he's clearly growing frustrated. Like that move was one of pure frustration. Like there's no other explanation for really why that happened. Like it kind of makes no sense, you know?
That's why I brought up George in Imola, which is George had never scored points in a Williams. He was sick of that narrative being around him, and he tried to make a move that was never going to stick, and he lost his head in irritation, and he takes up Valtteri, and then like loses his mind, and slapping Valtteri on top of the head or whatever. But
Yeah, he did have a little bit of a break from reality in that moment in time.
but
But you
but
understand.
all of this to say, like that's why in my head I went that, because that is the closest equivalent to Lando I can find, because it's like it makes no sense to do it otherwise. It makes no strategic sense.
Yeah.
It makes no, like, there wasn't, like, I'm trying to think of like a move as I can. Again, Lewis and Cobbs, right? Silverstone 21. I can understand how Lewis thought he was going to make that work, or Max in Silver or Monza later that year, right? I can see how they thought that was going to work out for them. I understand it was never going to, but like, I can at least follow the logic train. I can't even figure out what Lando was trying to do there.
No, that was gonna end
pure head loss.
That was gonna end the way it ended 100 times out of 100. Yeah, Moonchild said it feels like Lando has these drastic up and down in focus, and like that is very true in someone else. And Medium Rare also pointing out the his little tirade after Brazil and like his attitude about that. Yeah, like it he just you need to be able to, and Lewis is the king of this, and no one will ever be as good at it as Lewis, but like you have to try to reach that level where he he's clearly very upset and emotional and frustrated about things in the moment, but he also has this like low-key kind of crazy ability to like compartmentalize and be like, I'm gonna put that in a box for later. And Bono would literally be like, all right, like lock in, Lewis. Like this isn't about that right now. And he's very, 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 very good at it. And Max to a little bit lesser of a degree, because I feel like there are times where like he just fucking loses his shit. But this weekend is a good example of Max just locking in and doing what he needs to do, despite the fact that he's probably frustrated at being whatever back, like he's losing touch with the championship, whatever. Like, and I also think, well, Nico is a fellow member of the cringe community and will truly never escape that. Like, I understand him offering, like, it does come from like good intentions, I think, because Nico also really, really suffered from not being able to um compartmentalize in that way, you know?
Nico very much wants to be for the next generation of drivers what he wished somebody had offered him.
Yes. And
that is the most earnest thing you can have, even if some people want to call that cringe.
it's true. Cringe is
I feel like we have sort of skipped over the fact that George Russell is just the GOAT, and
all right, well, let's watch Toto.
Position into a win where he was never losing the race.
No, he won that handily. All right, let's watch Toto though, because that'll be about George. Wearing a polo, not a button down. Interesting. No, and yeah, no, George had a very solid weekend this weekend. And yeah, like it was Mercedes overall. It's so
Yeah,
crazy.
no, I mean, the thing about Mercedes that is like interesting, and I have never really experienced. I have never experienced Mercedes domination in real time. So, like, the thing about Mercedes is a there is a culture at Mercedes of acknowledging reality that there does not appear to be at Ferrari.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always come back to when whenever you bitch about the sort of culture of Ferrari, right? It would have been what, Imola 2022, which I believe was one of the first F1 races I ever watched live. I think it was the second race I watched live. The first time I ever woke up for an F1 race and watched the whole thing. Because I'd watched Australia live, but that's just because I'm a night owl. That was the race where Lewis comes like 14th. He's not on comms, but he's in like the week. Remember when Nico used to be in his like dungeon and they would just like call into him like 4 times a race?
Yes, but this was during his he okay, I accidentally told the whole internet that Nico was an anti-vaxxer when he got the COVID vaccine. He just in Germany, and I consulted with my German friend, and she was like, "Yeah, in Germany you didn't they told you not to get the booster if you had had COVID, which is not the way it was here at least." But he just didn't get the booster, and everyone was like, "He's an anti-vaxxer." And I'm like, "But that doesn't make any sense because he traveled to the Netherlands in 2021, which you 110% had to be vaccinated to do. He also traveled to Italy. Now, maybe that's a little different because Monaco is like adjacent, you know what I mean? And they're all in the Schengen zone. But like the Dutch Grand Prix was very like it was such a because I was supposed to go to the Dutch Grand Prix that year and I didn't end up going because it was originally they were like, if you're vaxxed, you're good. So I was like, okay, I can go. And then they were like, Dutch citizens only. And I was like, fuck. And they were like, no, sorry. Originally it was Dutch citizens only. And I was like, shit. And then they were like, just kidding. If you're vaxxed, you can come. And I was like, okay, like I'm good. And then they were like, EU passports only. And then in the end, it ended up being everyone. But like the whole time, it was like, we are going to ask for your vaccine information. And the reason they were going to do EU only is because the US like basically handed you it was just a piece of cardboard with a doctor scribbled something on it. It was like the least legit thing of all time. I remember I went to Iceland and like we had to give our vaccine stuff and I did it at this one bar and the guy was like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "This is what our vaccine cards are." Like I swear to God, like I'm sorry. Um but it ended up being everyone, but I just sold my ticket because I was like, I'm not playing around because if I'm gonna be so mad if like I go all the way there and like I can't get in because they changed it or whatever. Um, but he would have had to be have the original vaccine to get into the Netherlands that year. So he's not an anti-vaxxer. I apologize for spreading fake news.
Sorry. I mean, that's absolutely hilarious. But like, Toto comes on the radio in Imola 2022 um, and says, sorry, the car is a shit box, right? And like, I remember there was a bit of discourse about like, oh, is that like a rude thing to say about a car? You're shitting on the people in Brackley that have built this car or whatever.
The people in Brackley have eyes.
Georgia come P4 in that race. Lewis came P14, and it's like that. Yeah, okay, whatever. You want to say that? That's fine. But like, at least from Toto's standpoint, he was going out of his way to defend his driver, right? Coming on the radio at the end of the race to say it's a shit box, which became a sort of defining narrative of what I believe was the W13.
Yeah.
Yeah, W13, because W11 was the fastest car. Yeah. So W13, it became known as a shit box car even when it got better because Toto wanted people to blame the car and not Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
Right?
It's also like to me,
will never do that. And
yeah.
that is the thing about Mercedes that I find most notable and most, I think, genuinely good for the success of the team in the future is Toto has no problem taking the blame on himself to protect his drivers.
Yeah, which is I feel how most teams roll, but Ferrari are so obsessed with the institution of Ferrari. And it's so funny because the way people defend it is they're like, they do say that they're like, oh, it's so mean to the people at the factory, like blah 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 blah, as if in order and Toto didn't bring out the zero pod. Someone brought up the zero pod, the arrowhead into the paddock and like pour water on him. You know what I mean? He was just like, we should have built a better car, which is, again, stating the obvious. And I think that someone who is smart enough to become the chief of engineering at a Formula One team, presumably has an advanced degree that involves a lot of fucking math, can look when they're looking at the Formula One race, can be like, oh, like like that car isn't good. And also like, I'm sorry, is this isn't third grade? Like when you fuck up at your job, usually someone's going to let you know that you fucked up at your job regardless of what job it is that you have. Like why are we acting like these adult men need to be coddled like we're all in kindergarten here?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as if the millions of dollars that you are paid should mean that you should also be able to tolerate, you know, an honest assessment of your position, and also with full respect. In the same way that you've often said, like, if you were a Logan Sargent, sort of like back of the grid, you were getting qualified every race by your teammate. You know, you would feel quite bad about yourself. You would need other people to make you feel bad about your performances. I feel like if I'm working for Mercedes and we are getting, Lewis Hamilton is in fucking 14th, I feel like I would feel quite bad about that, regardless of what Toto said. Right?
Right, exactly. Like you,
And I would just like to point out that Merck went from a position where Lewis was routinely in 14th to a position where they got a 1-2 by the end of the season. They were regularly competing for podiums towards the end of the year, and had Lewis had better luck that year, he probably would have won a race.
yeah, it's almost like in order. Well, and that's why low key the timing of this upgrade is kind of pissing me off because to me, I think that there is a now we don't know this for sure, but there is a very real possibility. Like they should have known this was a problem in testing and started then. But of course, we did the same thing that we did last year with when they brought the upgrades and then wouldn't admit that they were a flop for 3 full races. Then they used a fourth race, Silverstone, as a test session before we started working on improving the situation. And it seems to me like they did the same thing and they spent the first 3 races being like, well, if we could run it like the car isn't at it, like this isn't showing its full potential, this isn't showing its full potential. And that to me is indicating that like maybe part of the reason that these are coming so late is because they didn't um fucking start working on it right away as they should have. Wait, also, but hang on, we're at Lando's interview on the F1 broadcast. I want to watch it. Okay, you've got to go for because you're fighting world champion. They weren't battling. He just ran into the back of him, and also like the way if Max Verstappen did that, they would have been like, "So you tried to kill him?" Thoughts? Although I will say, sometimes with when people bitch about how the media doesn't coddle Max like they coddle the others, I'm like, there is something to be said for you. You know, you get what you give. If you're nice to the media, they'll be nice to you back. So it's all well and good to be sassy and to be the bad guy and to say fuck you to Sky Sports, but there is a natural consequence to that. You know what I mean? They were battling, he had a slipstream. Okay, but in that moment, there was half a car width there. Like there was no also
I
do
mean, also the
why would you not
the
wait?
thing about the move going into the chicane. I want to be very clear about it. Oscar Piastri, congratulations, you are the Danny Regen of our generation. He braked a full-ass car later than Lando did. If Lando had any confidence in late braking, he could have had Oscar. But Oscar late braked because, I think some Australian heritage there. But, Oscar was just significantly later on the brakes. That's why you were behind going into the chicane. And that's why you had to go for a non-existent gap in the first place.
Also, Oscar was drifting to that side. Okay, but it wasn't even close. And Oscar, yeah, he was. That's the racing line. Like Oscar was taking the racing line. He was always going to be where he was going to be. But also, even if you misjudged it slightly, that's not a slight misjudgment. Like this wasn't. There was like maybe a foot of track on the other side of Oscar. But no, I thought it was up until that point. I thought it was a great battle from both of them.
Again, Lando needed to be later on the race, for sure.
Agree. Lando's lucky that he didn't puncture his tire. Yeah, it was the definition of an unforced error. I mean, I would have to go back and look at the exact racing lines, but both of the commentators said that he was on the racing line. So I'm gonna choose to believe that.
No, you want to be on the after the race of champions in race trim. You want to be on the inside of that wall, because you then want to force them to the. You want to force anybody else to the outside, so you're the inside line into turn one.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay.
I have driven Montreal 1,000 times in video game. I know how to drive it.
I don't know what they have reflecting onto Oscar, but he looks lime green currently in this lighting.
Look at your Twitter DMs. Look at the photo of Max and Georgia I just sent you.
Let me see. You know what? It's good to see them getting along. I'm happy. I'm happy they're happy.
As one of 12 people who actually like both of these men, I feel incredibly sad by this.
No, I think that their beef is genuinely the funniest shit in the entire world because they're both.
Because the thing about their beef is that they very clearly don't like each other or dislike each other professionally because they both see too much of each other.
They're the same person. And the fact that if we go all the way back to last year when this started, the way that both of them acted like complete psychopaths in that situation, like neither of them had a normal reaction whatsoever. Like Max being like, George said one thing to my face and another in the steward's office. And then the video came out of George saying exactly what Max said he said in the steward's office to his face. And then he was like, well, like he tried to get me a penalty when I know he didn't really believe that, as if that isn't like a very normal thing to do in Formula One. But then George could have been the normal one in that situation. He could have been like, I don't know, man, whatever. Not to be outdone in terms of pure craziness. George then writes him a 17-paragraph essay. He did an op-ed. This was not a statement. George wrote an op-ed being like, Max Verstappen is a fugly slut. Like, well, but it was though, like the way it came off, like he had that prepared. Like he was the essay length statement that George Russell, like every paragraph you thought the statement was going to be over and it just kept fucking going. No, it's hilarious because they're the same person, except for George is just like aggressively British, which does make him more annoying.
your hatred of the good people of the British Isles is commendable. But George and Max are just very obviously different reskins of the same human being.
Yeah.
They're both psychopaths who just want to be world champions more than anything on earth. And like the funny thing is, like they both care about football a lot or soccer a lot, outside of F1. And I'm sure, the story, George was at, I guess they were both at the airport in Paris or whatever on the weekend.
Yeah.
And they chatted. I'm sure, yeah, when they're talking about, Yannick Sinner or Colin Alcaraz, I'm sure they can have a perfectly nice conversation. That doesn't mean that they don't fucking hate each other when they're on track.
Right. It's also like
it says quite a lot. I think it says quite a lot about, even going back to Baku 2023 when George, makes a slightly ill-advised dive bomb.
Slightly.
I'm not going to defend that move. I think it was slightly.
Slightly is doing a lot of work there.
But it's like, George is here to fight. He's not just going to let him by because he's back from stopping in Red Bull. Like, that's in a season where far too many times people are just like, well, it's Max. I don't want to fight him. That's not my race. Having a driver who actually says that and thinks that,
no,
pretty damn good.
Well, and it's like also obviously they're not going to like start like yelling at each other in an airport. Like that's true crazy town level behavior.
No. I mean, I guess George is better than, was it Coulter?
Yes, I'll never forget that absolute nutter. But I also think like I will. I want to watch Fred's interview after this, but my final statement on George and Max is that like everyone was getting all Max Verstappen fans want it both ways when it comes to Jos Verstappen. Because George made his little dig about Jos, and people are like,
funniest thing George has ever said.
He's weaponizing Max's trauma. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I think the dig was about Jos being a piece of shit in general, not Jos being a piece of shit specifically toward Max. But you can't sit there and defend Max doing 2-hour roundtables about what a great parent he is and 12,000 word glowing ESPN articles and having him in the garage all the time and then be like, oh, but you can't. Anytime you bring Jos up, it's over the line. It's like, no. Either he's such a horrible person that like Max doing all of this stuff is like, because that's the thing is it's like outside of, forget about anything re Max. Jos Verstappen is like has done so much outside of that. Like he's run over 2 different women with cars. 2. and he beat up his own dad. He got arrested for getting into a brawl at a beach club in the Netherlands at 5:30 p.m. at age 59. Like, let's not pretend that outside of the raising Max of it all, Jos Verstappen is like an uncontroversial character. You know what I mean? He beat the shit out of a man at a Belgian karting track to the point where he cracked his skull and this guy had to go to the hospital. Like he stabbed a mechanic with a fork. Exactly. Like there are like either Jos is on the table or he's not. Like that's like if Max
and if Max wants to say, I essentially, I don't respect people like that. Whatever. And the fact that the 3 father figures in your life are Christian Horner, Helmut Marko, and Jos Verstappen, respectfully, fuck you. No, you don't.
Nelson Piquet.
Nelson Piquet 4. Yeah, let's add him into this fucking mix, right?
Yeah. And
like, fuck off, Max. You do not have a world to stand on. If you're having Thanksgiving dinner with Nelson Piquet.
Well, and my thing
I guess they don't have Thanksgiving in the Netherlands. You get my point.
Right. My thing is like, it's just like, okay, like if like, again, like, I think it's pretty clear that he wasn't I don't think the dig was like, LOL, you got abused. I think the dig was like, your dad's a piece of shit, which like is a fair dig against, because Max has wholeheartedly endorsed his father. So like, again, you don't get to have it both ways. Like he's either on the table, he's either on the table or he's not. And like
before we listen to Fred, can I express my conspiracy theory that I think is bullshit, but I kind of believe?
Yes.
Are we sure that Lewis keeps having damage to his car, or is Ferrari just lying to the so that Colt LH don't get mad at them for sabotaging their race?
Well, last weekend, I think that applies more, but I think that he hit a groundhog, so that would they're not small
Yeah,
creatures.
presumably there's actual proof of the groundhog that
Right.
exists.
And they're not small creatures. Like I feel like you definitely would have some serious damage from RIP to that groundhog.
Yeah, you'd probably lose 20 points in death force from killing
Yeah.
a groundhog. That's fine.
May that groundhog rest in peace, truly. But no, I think well, and also forget about the damage. They've both had to lift and coast so much. Like they zoomed into I must have missed them zooming into the remains. Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit too far Formula One broadcast. Although the Formula One camera work is some of the funniest on this goddamn planet. Like, there was one, I'm so sorry to Ollie, but like he crashed a little bit and then he like pulls off to the side and like his wheel just like keeps going. And the way that they like zoom from his car like into the wheel, just rolling down the track by itself, had me in stitches. All right, let's see Fred. Death by motorcycle. Not Fred blaming them being P5 and P6 on Charles crashing in FP1. So what's the excuse every single other weekend?
I mean, it's just pretty clear that Ferrari are, you know. I mean, I feel like Ferrari should probably beat Kimi Antonelli, but like, of the top seven, it really feels like they are 5 and 6, right?
Yeah, that P5 and I would say P4 to P7 is their natural home right now. And every single time Fred's like, well, like, but this, but that, but it.
I don't even know that. I don't even know. I'm sorry. Is the Ferrari car good enough that they should be beating
No.
one of the McLarens, and then one of George or Max? I don't think so.
No, I agree. You're right. No, they are very much where they belong.
They're definitively the fourth best car.
Exactly. But it was the reason they finished here is because they crashed in because Charles crashed in FP1. That's actually the whole reason. And obviously Lewis had damage from hitting the groundhog, but like I think the only thing that really affected was him like he probably would have finished ahead of Charles, but like do we really think he was going to compete with that front pack? Like there's no way.
He wasn't keeping up with Antonelli at all on that first stint, like not in the slightest. Even before the groundhog happened, like he was losing time. He was detaching because it was Piastri was 4, he was 5. He was fully detaching from that field even before the damage.
Yeah, no, Ferrari is clearly a step back from McLaren and Mercedes and Max. Like it's
And Antonelli is inconsistent, and so you
yeah.
can pop a P5, right? With if everybody finishes, if Antonelli has a bad weekend, and realistically, consistency is like Antonelli. I think is doing fine. It's more important that you're occasionally fast than you're consistent.
Yeah, consistency will come. You have to show that potential. And I think yes.
I mean, he's got a sprint pole. He's now got a podium. Like this is what he is what's supposed to do. I think if you're an Antonelli fan, Dev is a big Antonelli backer. This is the kind of weekend that you were looking for. For P4 in quali, P3 in the race. A totally earned P3 as well.
Yeah, and George is really good in quali, so like he's going to be a hard
losing to George Russell is not a bad thing.
Exactly.
That's not a failure. It just isn't.
Oh, that poor groundhog. Oh my god, I can't even. I can't even. I have
The
no.
number of people who are acting like a purple first sector when it was a purple first sector compared to the first runs in Q3,
Right.
not compared to
Right.
the final runs in Q3.
Right.
And B, the Ferrari was always fast. It was consistently fastest in Q1, whereas the Merc was faster in Q2 and Sector 2 and Sector 3. Like, I just don't like. Charles can say whatever he wants. You know, he takes full responsibility. Yada yada. That's what Charles does because he's Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, because he's been fucking kept in the basement below the lake of Ba Sing Se. Like he.
Yeah, sure. He has Stockholm syndrome, so he has to say what he has to say.
Right.
The idea that this was a car that was supposed to be on pole position this weekend, and it's only Dastardly Charles is,
No, and that's what Fred is talking about. He's like,
Q3. That's the reason.
well, we could have been P.
Absolutely not.
He's like, well, we could have been P4. It's like, fuck off. Like that's.
Okay, great. So you might have been Kimi Antonelli, maybe, sort of, maybe.
Yeah, it's.
Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're supposed to be happy about?
Yeah, literally. It's like, okay. Okay, 1 second. Quick bathroom break for myself. I will be right back.
I will try and filibuster. The other thing that I found super interesting about this race, I mean, Nico Hulkenberg. We should probably say Nico Hulkenberg's name. I think a P8 in a Sauber. That's a very, very good result. I think it's his third point scoring. I could be wrong with that, but I think that's the third time he's been a point scorer this season after Australia and what was that? Australia and Spain, obviously P5 in Spain. Hulkenberg, I mean, that's just an incredible result from Nico Hulkenberg. Like, huge result for Sauber, terrible result for Alpine. Of course, Gasly had, reason to be optimistic. I think a lot of people, I do wonder what that means for Gabriel Bortoleto, in the sense that, like, I think a lot of people have treated Bortoleto as like, well, you can't expect anything out of him. It's Sauber, the car is bad, yada yada. It's not necessarily true in the universe where Nico Hulkenberg has scored points in 3 races this year. I don't know the answer to that question. Ocon obviously did incredible in this race. That's a huge result. Somebody who I think has been a bit of an Esteban hater in recent years. Very good result for Haas. Stunned by how well he was able to carry those tires out and how well that was able to work for him.
And Ollie was P11, so it's not like he was like that far off,
No, not at all. But like, I have to say, I think one of the things that I've gotten completely. I think we need to start having a conversation about the fact that almost everybody gets better the second they leave Alpine.
Yeah, I mean, Alpine is. Prost told us, he was like, this place is a shit show. They suck. Like, they'll never be good. And I was like,
I think I am now. It's never going to happen. I'm aware of the fact it's never going to happen. And I don't even necessarily think it should happen. I would like. I am one of the world's foremost Pierre Gasly apologists, and it's a combination of on-track talent and respectful backhand.
I was gonna say that's just because you're in love with Pierre Gasly.
I am a gay man, okay? I cannot deny that is a fact. But I mean, this man has dragged 4 different cars that finished 6th or worse in the constructors to a podium. Okay, that is an impressive accomplishment.
Yeah. Okay, why won't
I would love Pierre. I would love to find out what Pierre could do in a better car.
Yeah.
Can we just launch Carlos Sainz into the sun and get Gasly in that Williams?
That'd be fun. I would be lying to you if I said I cared that much about Pierre Gasly one way or the other. Also, watch ESPN is not fucking checker flag. We're sorry, we could not play the video you requested. If problem persists, visit ESPN Health Center. Like, how about you just play the fucking thing I want you to play? All right, let's try on Chrome. Let's try on Chrome.
You don't use Chrome?
No, I use Firefox like a fucking adult because the fox is cute, obviously. Download. I mean, who could? I saw my options, and one of them is a cute little fox hugging around the globe. Why would I not?
Please tell me that you don't have positive associations towards Nate Silver because his presidential model included a goddamn 5e fox.
No, no.
Thank God.
No, not. It's not quite that strong, but I did pick Firefox because of the fox. I also like it. I don't. To be honest with you, except for the really bad ones, I like don't care that much about the what browser I'm using.
So you're not really interested in whatever the new Internet Explorer is that they can't call it Internet Explorer anymore. I don't know the name of.
I think it's Edge, maybe.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Microsoft Edge.
Goddamn terrible. It's the worst thing on earth.
Okay. Why? Like, now it's making me do all these things. Got it. All right. Watch. Now I'm going to have to log in all over again and watch this not even work. I'm going to be so mad.
What interviews do we even have left to see? I guess Charles we haven't seen.
And, well, I want to see my girl, Nico Rosberg.
I thought you were going to say Danica.
No, that fucking.
By the way, did you see Nico just like absolutely destroy her when she said Canada was one of the easier tracks to drive?
It's not even just that. Like watching Nico be on a panel with Danica, I hate it because it forces me. Like when Jensen's on with her, I'm like, so sorry, Jensen, but like I'm not doing that. But when Nico is on, like my love of Nico, I'm like, like you're forcing me to consume Danica Patrick content. But it's honestly worth it because if he's so, first of all, you think that Jensen has no poker face. The way he is openly like flabbergasted at everything she says, and immediately after she talks, every single time he's like, no, no, like the way he's just, and like Jensen does do it as well, but he's so British that it's a lot less noticeable because he like isn't quite, he's more polite about it, you know what I mean? Whereas Nico is just like wrong. He doesn't, it's like he's hitting like a little button every single time. I'm like, oh my God, Nico.
We just got to fire her so badly. We just got like Susie Wolf to do that.
Anyone. And it's like, this is genuinely the problem with like, maybe what's that Family Guy audio that's like, fine, maybe I'm not woke enough, but I'm like, personally, I feel that putting people in positions for the sake, like just for the sake of having a woman, is honestly more offensive than not having anything at all, especially when you make it extremely obvious that that's the reason they're there, as is the case with Danica Patrick. You know what I mean? And like you say the quiet part out loud, and also like it's just how, because I do feel like Sky is kind of pretty responsive to the public opinion of the people they have on to an extent, but
I mean, it takes them probably an extra year to fire Paul DeResta, but they did eventually fire Paul DeResta.
Right. And like, but oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to get on the internet.com and defend Paul DeResta, but like, how is he fired? And she's like, she is so much exponentially worse. And exactly. And also, like, she believes in lizard people. You're telling me we can't swear on the broadcast? Like, how is being a Trump supporter the most normal thing that you believe? Genuinely. Like, that is her most mainstream opinion, is that Donald Trump is awesome. That's the least controversial of her takes. Like, do you know how bad your takes have to be? I do like Naomi. I think she's good. I will say on commentary leaves a little bit to be I just think that there's such a I think that there's such a fall off on commentary between Martin Brundle and Crofty and anyone except for Nico and Jensen.
You're not a big fan of the Anthony Davidson experience in the booth?
I think he's okay. I would say actually probably
No. He's great at Sky Race Control. Karun, great at Sky Race Control. Dog shit in the booth. There are three people who are allowed to do color commentary. And and those people don't count. They're not. I'm sorry, they don't. They suck.
Yeah, I'm actually very, very scared who they're gonna put in there when Brundle retires. Like, because I feel like Bernie Collins is good, but I feel like Bernie should I like her in more of a Ted role, if that makes sense. I think that would actually be kind of like the perfect um
Well,
setup.
we've never seen her in the booth. I would like to see her try in the booth before I say I agree with you. I think I agree with you, but I'd like to see her in the booth once before we say that definitively.
I mean, she's been in for practice sessions and stuff. Has she not done a full quali race?
Never sent quality in a race. But also practice is a whole different beast. Like you can be more fun. You don't like have to lock in as much. It's a very different skill.
Yeah, no, it for sure is. You're more like filibustering in practice. I mean, I like Brittany Collins. I think she's great. This is one of those things where I have a um I remember what happened in 2021 and 2022 when she was the race strategist of Aston Martin, and I was paying a level of attention that probably not many others were to Aston at that point in time. And it's hard for me to overcome my feelings about her from that period. Let me put it that way.
But see, the thing is, the Aston strategy hasn't changed since then, because the Aston strategy is just a patented stay long and pray to God.
Yes, I mean, I don't really exactly like. I don't. Well, there were a couple situations where I was like, "What the fuck?" But also, like, Aston had bigger problems than Bernie Collins in that situation. But like, I just again, it's not fair at all. Like, I understand and recognize that, but I am a little bit unfairly biased against her. But whoa.
I'm just saying. I think some of that like stay out and pray that you were upset about at the time has lingered far beyond her time in the team, which suggests that it is more institutional than that.
That's true. That is true. I guess you know what is unfair to me is that like I don't really fucking pay attention to Aston anymore. So
Well, the other thing about Aston, or at least sort of like, I think sometimes we conflate strategy. We treat midfield strategies the way that we treat front of the field strategies, and I think a lot of times midfield strategies are built around the idea of we don't have a good option, so we might as well just try it in a way that like
yeah,
really defend like a Hannah Schmitz or whoever's the Hannah equivalent at Red Bull. It's like or at Ferrari, but it's like I think sometimes the answer when you're in a midfield team that is struggling to score points is just like, yeah, screw it. If this works, we will bag 16 points, and if it doesn't, we're screwed anyways.
No, yeah, you're more likely to go to a risky strategy. I need to watch it. Okay, wait. ESPN is also like, first of all, I just spent 45 minutes logging in on Chrome and it still says it cannot play the video. I I'm gonna just start using your TNT subscription. I'm done with ESPN Plus. I pay $15 a month and it never works.
It's not TNT, it's TSN.
TSN, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's delightful. We had Formula, we had F1 Academy on like just normal cable television today.
Let's go.
I did not watch a single second of it because I was watching golf, but still.
I had it on, but I was doing stuff. Um,
I think Dorian won,
yes,
right?
you did.
Am I right about this?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have to say, Mercedes does like a decent job of integrating her into the like
Yeah, they do.
Mercedes social media content sphere, right? Like, I think George and her did a video this week. I watch almost zero Mercedes social content because most of it's stock shit, but I at least know that they use her, and I'm happy about
Yeah.
that fact.
And I will say, I want to give a tip of my cap to Lewis because he, every weekend, the F1 Academy is there. His ass is there, photographed at the side of the track, like shining his light on F1 Academy. And I, I really do give Lewis credit for, there are a lot of criticisms you can launch at him, but I think he works very hard to make his corner of the universe a better place and to like uplift the other people in the paddock and like to support Susie and to support other people too. And I don't know. I
Until
just
until he is a producer on the F1 movie that has Brad Pitt in it,
right,
or he is hanging out in Antarctica with Jared Leto.
right, or on partying on a yacht with Elon Musk. But
Yeah. No, and George generally will do like an Instagram story, and I
yes,
suspect that is the Lewis influence
yes.
for sure.
No, listen, nobody's perfect. I'm not saying Lewis is an angel, but
And George shows up like the funny thing about George is that it's just like very obvious that he was Lewis's teammate because like I think the first year of F1 Academy he showed up and like was the trophy presentation
yeah,
at the final race of the year, which I want to say was like Abu Dhabi. And it's like I think he was technically there as the GDPA president, but he was really there, I think, because
yeah. He's
it was like we kind of need an F1 thing.
no,
Here.
you can very much
This is
see.
Susie. This is Susie's effort. We should probably have an F1 person here, and Lewis probably had more important shit to do.
They yes, you can very much see Lewis's influence in the way that George like even just like the cadence of how he answers questions. It's kind of funny.
And I and the funny thing is, I suspect George and Lewis will have a better relationship now that they're not teammates, and you've already started to see it a little bit. The two of them walking in together in Montreal this weekend, like you know, it's a lot easier, I think, for the two of them to have a good relationship now that they're not teammates and not fighting
For
contracts.
sure, but I don't know. I never thought that it was as deep between Lewis and George as people thought it was. I think that Lewis was more just frustrated with Mercedes and frustrated with the situation in general than like personally disliked George. You know what I mean?
I just don't think the two of them have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, they're very different people for sure.
Right. I also think like a lot of the like, oh my God, Charles and Lewis are going to be such great teammates. Have they done a single thing together since the season
Well,
started?
it's also so funny because I think it's just that, and I always thought this. I was like, you could very clearly tell that Charles did not fuck with Carlos at all. Like everyone is like, oh my God, Charles, 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 but like and they got, they did their thing, they got along. I'm not saying that they were like sworn enemies either, but there were always little moments. I'll never forget Sky was having them do a like paint, draw each other little thing or whatever for one of their pre-race shows. And they were like, who's better at whatever, soccer or something? And Carlos was like, I'm better at every sport than Charles. And Charles goes, not racing. And it was just like, it was such a little like, ooh, and they like go over, like they keep talking or whatever. And I'm like, nah, he meant that. Like you could just, so I think that I think both Lewis and Charles know what they're doing in terms of like I think they know that like in terms of building their own brand, they're better. Lewis wants Lewis knows that Lewis wants to be incorporated into like the Ferrari Hall of Fame and like that's like, their registrar of drivers, which is going to be an uphill battle after everyone so strongly associates him with Mercedes for all these years. And I think that Charles knows that, like, he views it the same way that that Lando should have viewed Danny Rick, which is that if we are if we get along and we're this great bromance or whatever, it's gonna make he learned, and it's the same way he acted towards Seb. So like it shouldn't really surprise anyone. But I think that Charles and Lewis like play chess and stuff. Like I think they get along, but I don't see them becoming like best friends or anything like that.
I mean, it's just, I mean, the thing is, there's like a decade between,
Yeah.
more than a decade between Lewis and Charlotte and Lewis and Georgia. This is like, you're not going to be, you know, you're not going to be like buddy buddy with them. But I think the problem is that people think that like Lewis is going to be Valtteri levels buddy buddy with the teammates, and it's like part of the reason Lewis could be
right.
Valtteri levels buddy buddy with Valtteri is he did not respect Valtteri in the slightest as an actual competitor to him.
Absolutely not. And also, I mean, well, there will always be people. There are still people that think like Seb and Charles hated each other, and I'm like, really? um, he made him not the Pinterest collage helmet, not after the Pinterest collage helmet, and also like Charles's like tweets are about Seb are like the most unhinged shit of all time. But the I also think there's got to be an element of awkwardness there, especially at first, and you can see it like very much in the early stages of like the Charles and Seb relationship, of the Georgia and Lewis relationship, where it's like this person grew up as a child like worshiping you, and now you're coworkers. Like I have to imagine, like from Lewis's and from Seb's perspective, like that's just like a little awkward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And I think it's awkward for Charles and George in that
Of
situation too,
course.
because it's like, you know, how do you sit in a driver brief, either a pre-race briefing or a debrief, and be like and advocate for yourself against this guy who you have idolized
Yeah.
and is arguably kind of the reason that you are in this sport in the first place, right?
Yeah.
That's a super weird position to put yourself in. And like, which is why it's like it's just never going to be what people think. It's always going to be awkward, but like, you know, I think, which is why again I think George and Lewis are going to have a better relationship in the next few years.
For sure.
Right?
I thought they had some cute moments like while they were teammates too. I felt like I feel like George and Lewis got along. Like I mean it wasn't like
Yeah, they were friendly.
Yeah,
like,
I don't think they were like
Lewis fans. The thing is, like Lewis fans being like, oh my God, him and Charles, oh, they're gonna be such better friends than than PR63 than he ever was with PR63. You saw right through him. No, no, that's not how this works. The problem with George, quote unquote problem, is that Lewis wanted to win. Mercedes was not giving him a good enough car. And the couple of times that Lewis felt like he could have gotten a win, especially pre 2024, were like, he crashes into George in Qatar, and George doesn't sacrifice his own race for Lewis in the Netherlands. It's like, yeah, that's fine. If you are Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure you are allowed to be pissed.
Yeah.
Mercedes let George pit from second place, but there's a difference between being annoyed that Mercedes let it happen and being like, George fucked me. Like, respectfully, it is not George's job to protect your race.
Yeah, George was trying to win, and I feel like Lewis, of all people, understands that. I also
it is George's right to prioritize George's race. And the thing about Lewis, and the reason why Lewis and George never actually had a falling out in their 3 years as teammates, is that Lewis has enough self-awareness to realize that he does not want to be the world's biggest hypocrite.
Right. Well, it's kind of it is a very interesting, but don't worry, the Lewis fans are turning on Charles too, so
Well, yeah, for the same exact reason, which is that Charles does not view his job as getting the hell out of Lewis's way.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's almost like this is a competition.
It is almost like in a sporting context, not everybody can win. And the funny thing about F1 is that that is actually possibly the sport where that is the least true, because at least in F1 you can have you can actually support, Charles and Ollie or George and Alex, right?
Right.
Which, because the thing is, like, respectfully, how often do we think George and Alex are going to actually fight on track together while?
No, it doesn't matter until they're. It doesn't. It doesn't matter until they're teammates or fighting for a championship.
Correct. And you can, like, I have no problem. I was super happy for Kimmy, right? If the Merc next year, like, let's say Mercedes aces the next rank cycle, right? I'm not saying they will, but let's for the sake of it. Yeah, a lot of my affection for Kimmy Antonelli is gonna, GTFO the second that he is an actual threat to George Russell, right?
Real. No, I feel the same way. It's so funny. I literally was like, well, at least the bright side of Ferrari, silver lining to Ferrari being a flop is that I don't have to truly like a Lewis Charles championship fight would be hard on my heart because I love Lewis. I've always loved Lewis, but unfortunately for the first one, I would be rooting for Charles and like right now rooting for Charles isn't even though they're teammates, it like doesn't Ferraris and of course that hasn't stopped both Lewis and Charles fans from being the most unreasonable people on planet Earth. But
so what you're telling me is that the 2029 Ollie Behrman Charles Leclerc title fight is going to be hard on you.
No, that's Ollie, love you, sweet child, but like, Charles is the number one priority. Lewis, it's just tough because it's like I've been a fan of Lewis for so much longer than I've been a fan of Charles, just by virtue of the fact that he's been around since I was like a fucking kid. Um, and but Seb was always my number one, and then he kind of passed that crown on to Charles. And but Lewis has just like always been like right up there, you know what I mean? Same thing with Nico, obviously not anymore. But so it is like it's more of an equal like it's tougher for me between Lewis and Charles because I'm like, well, like Charles is like the crown holder, right? But at the same time, like I've been a fan of Lewis for so much longer. I think what it comes down for me in a hypothetical current Ferrari championship battle is just that, like, as much as I do want Lewis to like get the eighth, go out on top, Charles doesn't have any championships. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, we priorities here. Like we got to get him one, and then. But I do think that if championships, you know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, we priorities here. Like we got to get him one, and then. But I do think that if Charles won one, the next season, if they were in a championship fight again, I probably would be pulling more for Lewis.
Deranged, completely deranged from you. I would just like to make that clear.
Well,
Lewis has won enough goddamn championships.
My true loyalties are with Seb. Like, I would drop kick any of these motherfuckers into the Monaco Harbor if it meant that Seb would win another championship. But
okay. Then why are you kind of pro Max over Oscar?
No, I know. Really, I am on paper and in my rational mind, I am rooting for Oscar because obviously I don't want Max to get 5 and I obviously am not rooting for Lando, but I think
why does your hatred of Mark Webber exceed your love of Sebastian Vettel?
It's not that. It's that my hatred of my McLaren haterism plus Mark Webber haterism is
but you love Lewis and you love Tenson. Why do you hate McLaren?
If you had asked me when I was watching when I was 13 years old, even though I was a diehard Seb fan, if you had made me pick a team, I would have picked McLaren. But the minute they changed into that god awful carrot, they just an evil entered that organization that I think, and that I do mean Fernando Alonso again. But the
silver McLaren is absolutely better than this fucking papaya.
1,000%. But I also think you know what it is because despite my best efforts and despite the fact that I do talk shit 24/7 and say I'm not a Tifosi, I have become a little bit Ferrari pilled. I think that's where my McLaren haterism like truly comes from.
How have you allowed that to happen, CJ?
I know. I am unfortunately succumbing to the forces. But also, no, I'm rooting for Oscar. I am rooting for Oscar. I just think it would be kind of funny if realistically, I'm like, they're having a mid off, and I'm like, I want I just feel like you can't count Max out. It's not that I want him to win, it's that, like, in my mind, for some reason, even though it's illogical, like, I just assume Max is gonna win. But also, I yes, I don't want him to beat Seb, but, like, with Seb, it's like I am so confident in his place in the pantheon of Formula 1 that, like, him getting beat by Max, like, isn't really the end of the world, and I also know that I also very much so doubt that Seb cares about that. So, having one more there's only 3 people ahead of him, like, 3 versus 4 isn't that huge of a deal, but I am rooting for Oscar despite his unfortunate affiliations.
You just need to embrace. You just need to embrace Mark Webber. When's the F1 movie coming out? Like a couple weeks, right?
I have no idea, I'm not giving them my dollars.
You're not going?
Fuck no, why would I support that with my money? Brad Pitt choked his own child.
Because I need to have you on the podcast to do a definitive breakdown of how it's terrible.
Oh, I'll be watching it as soon as it's available legally online, but I am not giving 1 cent to Brad Pitt.
Oh my god. I mean, but you're giving money to Lewis Hamilton as a producer.
I think he's doing okay financially. I think he'll survive.
So can we talk about the fact that Lewis is a producer on this movie, and then like in the goddamn trailer, they talk about how like they're faster in the corners and in the straights.
Yeah,
which
but like
just means they're faster.
But like that doesn't surprise me because it's like I'm sure Lewis helped out a lot with like things here and there and providing them like this is how Formula 1 works and like this is how the race weekend goes through and like this is what the settings should be like. But at the end of the day, Lewis Hamilton isn't marking up that script. Like let's be FFR right now.
Okay, fine. Then have a goddamn intern at one of these teams mark up the script.
No, I mean what I think it's going to be and every indication we have so far is proving me correct is that it is just the most generic milk toast copy and paste sports storyline and like I just think that there are so many great
do we actually know that Brad Pitt fucks the race engineer, or have you just like
there's a scene
in my brain?
There's a scene of them making out in the trailer, so I feel like we can
I have okay, to be fair, I have not watched the trailer, so
so I mean I don't know if they like fuck on screen, but like that's for sure the implication.
Okay. Why didn't they just like hire an F1 fan to write the script?
I was right here. You know what I mean? It's right there.
I am trying to write a goddamn F1 book these days.
It was right there for them. Rush was, and I get that it's Apple. They probably don't own the IP. Rush was such a good movie. Everybody loved it. And people outside of F1, like, when I'm like, oh, like when I talk about F1, oftentimes people are like, oh, like Rush. I'm like, yeah, I can't believe you. Like, that movie holds such universal appeal. They brought in Nicky Lauda to consult on it. He was like, it's 98% what happened. The other 2% is just like, obviously, they like altered some conversations and like conflated some things together into one scene because like you need to make it a concise movie script, right? Like obviously it's not going to be exactly the way things went down, but it's like true to the spirit of the story, right?
Yeah.
Nicky Lauda is the strength. Like it's perfect because that happens. The next thing, Rush 2, Prost and Senna. Prost is Nicky Lauda's next teammate. So it starts with Nicky retiring and Senna coming to the team, which is what happened. And then you watch the Prost and Senna McLaren years unfold. Bonus points if you do like the whole of it. And then Rush 3, Mercedes, because Nicky is there as well as the advisor. Like it makes so much sense. It's why. And like why would you not it's teed up so perfectly. But even beyond that, I feel like there are so many great F1 stories to be told that to insert the most to do Top Gun Maverick F1 is is just, to be honest with you, because and the reason Top Gun Maverick semi worked is because A, they're playing heavily upon the nostalgia and relying on the goodwill from the first movie, and B, you have a bunch of hot guys shirtless. So
and see they essentially marketed it as, like, if you cared about Top Gun, they marketed it as a Top Gun movie. And if they didn't, they essentially marketed it as Mission Impossible, whatever, as the Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise, right?
right.
This is nothing. Also, Red Bull has apparently protested something, and George Russell is being summoned to the stewards, and I don't really know why. I'm assuming it's the safety car bullshit.
I would
I don't know
assume
why
that.
Red Bull are being pussies.
I would assume that as well. But yeah, like I just think it's such malpractice to do this like generic storyline that like doesn't
But
even
the thing is, if you want to make a fictional storyline, there are 1,000 really interesting and compelling stories that you could tell.
yes.
Um, you have read the first, half of a chapter of the thing that I am trying to write these days,
Yeah.
which is like, what if an F1 driver got outed?
Again,
Right?
a very interesting premise. Like to me, it's like they inserted the most generic sports story of all time and they're relying on the setting to be so compelling that that's like the main draw. But and people get on my ass when I talk about it being realistic, but I'm like that is the whole sell of the movie. I think about all the time there's this girl I follow on YouTube she uh like she's like a historical costumer. She wears all historical clothes. She like sews them herself. It's crazy. And she reviews the historical costuming from different movies in a level of detail that is genuinely insane. But she always says at the beginning of the movie, and like she got some flack for giving Emma a 10 out of 10 because like the costumes are so bright in a way they really wouldn't have been in that period. But she's like, it fits the movie, the costume, the silhouettes work, and she's like, and also this movie, the costume design is meant to enhance the whimsical and cartoonish and comedic angle that they took on the story. It was never billed as, she's like, I only judge it down to the button when the movie, the people that made the movie come forward themselves and say, we are doing this accurate to a T. We're going very far out of our way. And that's essentially what the F1 movie has done. Not only did they pay, presumably, an unspeakable amount of money to film during F1 race weekends, but they have said over and over and over again that the realism is a central tenet of like why this movie is going to be good and a central tenet of the pitch. So to then be like, oh, like yes, that is her, Bernadette Manor. She's great, highly recommend. But to then turn around and be like, well, like of course it's not going to be totally realistic. It's like, well, but why should I not hold them to the standard that they said that they were going to meet? And people are like, "Oh, well, like I just want to watch like I want to watch the racing. I'm here for the racing." And I'm like, "I know you're not trying to be a I'm here for the racing hardo on a fucking Hollywood movie. If you're here for the racing, get an F1 TV subscription. Like this isn't an
Yeah. Just go back and rewatch Jensen Button 2011 win in Montreal, you know, or Charlotte Max in 2019 in Austria, right? Like,
literally
that's what you want to be.
right. And also, I would just like to point out that now we've seen a very limited amount in the trailer. So who knows? This might not be the case the whole movie. But all of the racing shots we've seen are just a POV of Brad Pitt's face as he drives a Formula 1 car. So you can't actually tell what's happening. And to be honest with you, I've in those even just few instances of clips, I found myself being frustrating because you don't know what's happening. You can't see. And maybe it's just because I'm so used to watching racing one way, right? That like it kind of threw me off. But I'm like, I don't know. I guess the I don't, and I also just don't get why people are so pressed to defend this movie. Like, I, are they pay? Is Apple paying you? Like, I don't. It looks bad.
I mean, I think it will be an extremely, I think it will be an extremely fine visual experience if you know nothing about what you are watching. Horner, by the way, has said that has confirmed it relates to two aspects. One is erratic driving between the safety car, behind the safety car, breaking on the straights, and the other is dropping too far back behind the safety car.
Okay.
Apparently, in one of his interviews, Max dismissed this, both of these aspects as grandstanding. But hey, they're protesting.
Wait, so he's trying to get George a penalty that he doesn't really think he deserves. It's almost like this is actually.
You might say that. I couldn't possibly comment.
This is actually interesting. Someone in my chat said, idle speculation is Apple angling to acquire F1. It is interesting because we don't know that still nobody has bought the TV rights for next year. F1's going to have to come off that price point if they want to make a deal. But Apple could very much be a contender for the rights. Now, I think that would be a disaster for F1 because Apple doesn't have a TV station. And the whole pro of having a broadcast deal instead of just funneling people to your own to F1 TV where you get to keep 100% of that money is the draw in of the casual viewer who might just flip on ESPN because or ABC because they watch ESPN and ABC, and that you get viewers that way, and like maybe they'll become hooked, and like you can sort of, and also people already have ESPN so they don't have to necessarily pay money to watch this, and so you're able to suck in the casuals that way. And then also, of course, like I'm nervous about this rights deal because A, I'm nervous that we're going to lose access to the Sky coverage. B, I'm nervous that they're going to remove, but my main concern is that if they're pitching this for $190 million, I don't think if someone was going to bite, they would have bit already. But it worries me that we're going to lose our F1 TV access. And that, for myself personally, would be devastating.
So, can I tell you the conspiracy that I 1000% believe?
Yes.
So, do you know who so Liberty Media owns F1, obviously?
Yes.
You know who the majority, I don't know exactly the majority shareholder, but certainly the majority voting shareholder and Liberty Media is?
It's Malone, right?
It is John Malone. John Malone is the controlling interest in what American media company?
Disney.
Warner Brothers Discovery, which is now being split.
Oh. I thought Warner Brothers
Discovery needs a big splash with this suddenly raised stock price after they sent all of their dying cable networks out onto a barge. John Malone owns a company that's doing a media rights deal.
Now that's an actual antitrust issue. You want to talk about F1 antitrust?
And who has been one of the most reliable donors to Republicans in the last 10 years?
I'm guessing John Malone.
Yes. I expect those rights to end up on HBO, on the soon-to-be rebranded HBO Max.
Ugh, that's a terrible choice. Do you think they'll do
You know who has a piece of Sky?
John Malone.
Warner Brothers Discovery, baby.
Okay, well that's good. At least they'll probably keep the Sky broadcast.
Well, because if you wanted to watch Game of Thrones or whatever in England, you had to pay for Sky. That was who had the rights to that, all of that content.
Oh, and so I did not know that.
I am fully convinced this is a John Malone. That the inflated price is a full-on John Malone. Fuckery.
I mean first of all, that's so
And don't forget, Warner now has all of the money that they're not spending on basketball rights anymore.
Interesting.
Available to pay for F1 rights.
That's true. Well, first of all, I hate America. Let's just start there. But in terms of myself personally, that doesn't really affect me at all. And I don't think it'll affect many people because ESPN, Disney, and Hulu is all one subscription. So if you have ESPN Plus, or if you have Watch ESPN, you have HBO.
No, no, no. You pay. I think you pay for a bundle that these two, that Disney and Warner offer.
Yeah, but you used to be able to.
Everybody does this. I think
No,
you pay for this bundle because Max has the West Wing, and you've told me this before.
and Gossip Girl.
I think you have HBO Max solely because, or Max because of a bundle between them and Disney.
Yes. I don't want Disney Plus. I've tried to cancel my subscription many times, but like they're all tied
Yeah, I
together.
think you have like the total Disney bundle plus Max, which was bundled together like 2 years ago, and I think you're just riding that forever. I think.
Well, no, it happened because I have Hulu, and so with Hulu, no ads. You get if you pay for the top part of Hulu, which I do, you get those things with it as well. But also, most people don't pay for the adless Hulu, so well,
It's the streaming the fact that streaming has become the whole thing that streaming was made to avoid, which is to say this like massive bundle
yes.
upon bundles is deeply hilarious. Um, can we just like I just have to say though, as a conspiracy, does my conspiracy hold water at least?
Oh no, that's absolutely what's about to happen.
Let's go. I love when I convince somebody of this.
But also, I will say, like, if that was going to be the case, why wouldn't we're creeping up on the time where it's like they need to make a deal. But also, maybe they're waiting till the last minute and they have it artificially high. That way, like, they can justify the purchase, even though it's very clearly an antitrust problem by being like, well, nobody else wants it.
Oh, sorry. Do you know who? So Apple owns the movie, but they don't actually do any of the distribution themselves. Do you know who's handling distribution of the F1 movie?
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, baby.
Yeah. It's all a cluster. That's like what all like guess who sits on who's the guy that owns the Dolphins again?
Stephen Ross?
Yeah, he's on Liberty's board. So it's like no wonder Miami got extended for 45 fucking years.
Yeah, of course.
It's such fucking bullshit.
Oh no! I am like fully convinced that the drama line thing and David Zaslav being connected is going to end up mattering to my F1 fandom. I have been convinced of this for 2 years, and I'm thinking this is the moment.
Yes, I also am so curious about. I'm just. I mean, F1 is a huge moneymaker, right? But like they're. If you look at their SEC filings, they're bleeding money on Vegas. And
yeah,
I'm like, how long? Because you can sign all the extensions you want, but like if they keep bleeding money like they've been bleeding money, they're gonna pull the plug. They're gonna have to, like, just in terms of like fiduciary duty, like they're gonna have to pull the plug on it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the Dallas GP replacing Vegas in 3 years. Because Malone and all of the AT&T people and everything else are all at Dallas.
Oh, don't they own somewhere better?
I mean, hey, Jordan Spieth's golf career is in part because AT&T is based out of Dallas, and therefore they gave the Dallas kid a sponsor and an exemption into the Byron Nelson in 2010. We are nice about AT&T.
Sure, fine. They can whatever. I've never felt a feeling toward AT&T in my life. I have felt a feeling toward Dallas, and it's not a positive one.
What? You don't love Jerry World?
Well, oh my god. Well, actually, I'll say this. Jerry Jones is the perfect F1 figure. He would fit right fucking in. But
well, you've of course heard the rumors, right?
What rumor?
Oh, I don't know if I told you. Sean said some last.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you're about to say, so I can't offer you advice here.
There are allegedly okay. Mark Cuban allegedly has well, we know that because he's from the Mavericks. He has a lot of money to spend on something,
Okay.
and nobody really knows what he's going to spend it on.
He's gonna buy F1?
There have been the rumor that I have heard, and very very loosely sourced, trust tree of all of it, is that he something to do with F1 is potentially coming down the tracks. And I have no idea what that could look like.
Mark Cuban. Sorry. I'm answering my chat. I'm answering my chat. Listen, I I think that Mark Cuban has a would be a better steward in that I think that he has a better grasp of w- just like marketing in general and like what I trust him more to analyze. Okay, like what makes F1 special? Like you can't just shove all these random tracks into random parts of I mean, I don't know. Anyone would be better than Liberty at this point. Like they've what have they made other than F1 TV? F1 TV is amazing. Other than that, I guess Drive to Survive you could say. But other than that, they've not made one good choice the whole time. What track has been added in the last 5 years that's been a positive addition? Vegas is probably the best one.
Hey, I love Vegas. I
I
mean,
know.
they also, hey, Liberty also added Imola back to the calendar,
COVID added Imola back to the calendar.
and then they kept Imola on the
That's
calendar.
true.
They ditched Paul Ricard.
That's yeah, but that was just a fortunate consequence of them axing traditional tracks.
They
As much as I am an advocate of the traditional tracks, not everyone's a banger, and Paul Ricard is a testament to that.
um I mean they didn't get rid of Monaco, which a lot of people thought they were going to do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that yeah, that there would be full scale revolt if that were to be the case.
No, the biggest thing is that everyone talks about like, oh, we need to make golf more like F1. We need like the F1ification of golf. The biggest way you can do that is put every single final round. I'm only asking for final round. I would love it if you gave me every round. Give me the ability to rewatch the final round of every golf tournament from the last 25 years, and I will pay you an ungodly amount of money because, like, next week on the PGA Tour is the Travelers Championship. If you are not a psycho and don't know what that means, the Travelers is where Spieth was chipped in from a bunker to win the tournament. Big fan of that week. Love that tournament. Would quite love to be able to rewatch that Sunday, and I can't. I
Yeah.
cannot pay money to golf, to the PGA Tour, to any institution in the world of golf. I can't do that.
That's insane.
I can't spend my money to achieve that outcome. Let me give you my fucking money, but they won't let me.
Me to Sky Sports. But no, I have always said, I think, obviously, I think Drive to Survive was a factor, but people are like, people way oversimplify it when they're like, Drive to Survive is the reason F1 blew up. The blow up happened in 2020, and Drive to Survive had been around since 2018. I think its existence was important because when everyone was watching everything on Netflix during lockdown, it a lot of them watched Drive to Survive, including me. I was like, "Oh, I haven't watched F1 in a while." But to then be able to watch Drive to Survive and be like, "Okay, I'm hooked." As you said, I was like, "Where can I watch old F1 races?" Oh, there's this archive that for $75 a year, which is a very reasonable price, I can watch every single F1, well, not anymore. They've taken a lot off, but I can watch every single F1 race that's ever happened. Huge. And the NFL is kind of they're trying to get there with like the whatever like streaming app they have now. but it is not anywhere near the level of F1 TV. And I think that having F1 TV there in that moment, it was huge. And I also think that that them there were three big factors, I think. It was the existence of F1 TV, the fact that they were one of the first sports back, and the fact that when even before they were back, they were like you had the biggest young they didn't just have like you know, no offense, but like some randos or whatever. They had the stars of the future in Lando, Charles, George, and Alex, and Pierre sometimes, and others would pop in doing doing streams together, doing the races, lawnmower racing, whatever. It really helped, I think, kickstart the fandom in that period, and that was what compounded the existence of Drive to Survive and just like exploded F1 in 2020.
Yeah, of course. Like it did like and the thing is F1 has, arguably to some purist detriment, right? They will go anywhere that there is an audience. They will go anywhere. They will market to any group of people, right? Like Taylor Swift showed up at a Celtic finals game this week, and that has led to discourse because of course it has. And it's like hockey is not in a place where we are physically able to say no to quite literally anybody who wants to jump to a game. Like as a sport, we are not in that position. We are not lucky enough to be able to say no to anybody, let alone Taylor Swift. But it's like F1, has did a very good job of this, but also frankly, just the ability to so you watch the Twitch quartet and you saw the Goat Simulator video and you wanted to know who this, Charles Leclerc person is, right?
Yeah.
Or the Charles Leclerc banana suit, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Google and oh shit, I want to watch this guy win, and then you go watch Monza 20, Monza 19 or whatever. That's that path is a totally reasonable, normal path, and
no, they got a lot of people that way.
F1 made that very easy and simple for you to do, as opposed to golf, where again I quite literally cannot watch my favorite golfer win a tournament.
Yeah,
I cannot pay them money to do this.
You're like, I just want to give you my money. Why are you not letting me?
Yeah. Come on, let me pay you the money.
I also think the Twitch quartet helped a lot in one of the things Drive to Survive is good at, which is it's hard to drop into a sport, especially like F1 that's so nuanced, but you can watch it and even if it's a banger race and you're like, "Oh my god, that was really exciting." When you don't know who anyone is, and a lot of people like to be like, "Oh, I'm a purist, you don't know wheel, this is real wheel or whatever." But even those people, the moments that they point to as some of the most iconic battles or moments in Formula 1 are they carry the extra weight because of the context. And when you drop in without any context of who anyone is, what's happened, especially in a sport that has such a rich history that currently impacts today, like F1 does, you are really it's going to be hard to capture people that way, right? Because they're just going to be like, okay,
would something like say Austria 2019. Very good race, very interesting race, for a lot of reasons. Would Austria 2019 mean anything if we didn't know about the incident?
Well, exactly. Of course, you would be like, "Oh, that was a good battle," but what makes things stick around to the point?
What makes that lore is why Charles is so pissed on the thing on the podium. The fact that he hadn't won a race yet. The fact that it's the two of them. The fact that those two have all of that, born 2 weeks apart essentially, have been racing each other their entire goddamn lives.
Yeah. No,
that's what makes that great. because it's a okay to good on track battle, right?
Exactly. And it makes, yeah, that's the context is what pushes a good fun battle to the next level.
The
And
reason we remember Qatar 2023, like, okay, Lewis is just an idiot who tried to go for a gap that doesn't exist. Okay, that's fine. In the context of Lewis Hamilton's career, in the previous time he had come together with his teammate on a lap one, that is why that matters as much, right?
right. No,
If not for Nico, no one would remember George and Lewis crashing George and Lewis crashing into each other.
yeah.
Of course not.
Poor right. Exact that's yeah, someone else also pointed out there like the Senate and Prost crash of Suzuka is important because of the first crash. And yes, and they said we love storylines. I human people the sports purists can try to pretend that they're above it all, but like human beings are invested in the narrative. They like stories. They you know what I mean? Like they like the archetypes. That's why we like sports so much is because of the narrative. That's why the week before the Super Bowl, like everybody talks about the same thing, right? Like it's and I understand that like I also think that there's a little bit of a epidemic of and I say this with love in my heart because I am a chronically online individual myself and I find myself doing this where it's like when you consume every single piece of F1 content and then turn around and be like, "Oh, like they just hammer this home over and over and over again or they've made this joke a million times or this is played out." It's like, "Okay, you have to understand that the reason it feels that way to you is because you're consuming every single second of Formula 1 content available. Most it's not played out to most regular people because like they go outside. And I say that as someone who doesn't go outside. So and also I
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like the thing about, I mean, why was the average like neutral cheering for Tiger Woods in 2019 when he won the Masters, or Phil in 2021 when he won the PGA? Like, plenty of people who normally would have been on one side of that divide were cheering for both of those men at those two opportunities because they love to see the all-time greats get their one last dance, right?
yeah,
Same reason why we all cheered for Tom Watson, 15 goddamn years ago at the Open Championship. The same reason why, we love a good comeback, right? If plenty of people who don't like him, Jordan Spieth contends at the Open, he'll be the person that people want to win because it'll be so great to see him in an Open Championship. I am cheering for Adam Scott, a golfer who I have like zero relationship with, because it would be fun as hell to see him win a major like 20 years after he won this first one. Just because that's a narrative and it's fun. It's a good narrative to have.
exactly. No, I the story of course not. And I think that Drive to Survive does a good job of and they don't always hit the nail on the head. I would rather they let me produce it. I think I would, sometimes it's clearly produced and put together by someone who isn't as deep in the F1 weeds as they need to be. That is like my main criticism of it. I love the behind the scenes stuff. I love the stupid like hometown scenes that we get. Why were George and Toto having that conversation straddling a rubber boat? I don't know, but it was funny. And but the I think that what the Twitch quartet did in that way is that it allowed you because in F1, like, it's not as fun if you don't have a fave, right? And so it allowed a more personal introduction to these people that you don't always necessarily get. And that's why I am such a grill the grid defender, even though of course it's silly. I understand why the drivers might not love doing it, but I think it's nice that you get it's a very like low stakes kind of more relaxed environment where you kind of can, get to know these people for lack of a better way of putting it. And especially some of the ones who maybe aren't going to get the 20-minute Sky Sports segment. You know what I mean? To be like this is like this person and we're going to interview their mom, right?
Yeah, I mean the thing about our sort of our culture nowadays, this is not just at one point, is that we have decided that we care about people being on the right side of a cultural divide, right? We care about authenticity and relatability more now than we ever have before, which is why whether and when Taylor Swift was going to endorse Kamala Harris was like the talking point of summer 2024, because we want to feel good about the art we consume. But people like knowing the people that they're talking about. Apparently, so they're out of the sewers now. It's been 45 minutes. George shrugged his shoulders when he was asked whether or not he thinks he's going to hold the win. Red Bull fans seem to think that this is a slam dunk penalty and Mercedes have to give up the race win.
Oh my God,
I fail to see how that is even remotely possible, because I think they really send George to the back of the fucking grid. Like, that seems absurd to me. But I guess that is theoretically possible. And we're just waiting for the doc spot to say anything.
Come on, doc spot.
We have been live for over 2.5 hours now.
The interesting. I feel like someone said the funniest outcome would be a Max race ban. Imagine for that. But I feel like, well, where's George on points? Actually, that would be.
He's not that high. He spent like the vast majority of late 2022 racing precisely nobody in like P5 land of every like 30 seconds behind everybody. Like, the midfield is 30 seconds behind him, and he's 10 seconds detached from the front of the field. I think he has like 4 points.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, never mind. But a George race ban would be fucking hilarious. But obviously that's not gonna happen. I also.
I mean, you just want to see Valtteri get another race.
Put Dorian in there. Dorian, sorry, not Anne.
Honestly, would probably do just as well as Valtteri. Team Gage. Team is Manuel.
Oh, I've already told you this, but you know that I'm a wait, what Middle Eastern race was it? Qatar, when George replaced
No, it was fake Bahrain. It was the Bahrain double.
Oh, okay.
Secure.
I am a secure truther in that I think that the first time they put the wrong wheels on. That I believe. That I believe, because the commentary noticed that right away. He comes out again. He overtakes Valtteri again. Then they're like, George, you have a puncture. I'm such a truther about that, because I feel like in Toto's mind, he was like, I've seen what I needed to see. He overtook him twice. Spare Valtteri the embarrassment, but more because Toto was already going to get a million questions. But if George had like won that race, can you fucking imagine? Like, that would have looked so bad on Toto, for not promoting him. I am a truther that let me put it this way. I cannot think of a time other than that in Formula One when a driver had a puncture and was unaware that they had a puncture. Just saying. I'm a secure truther. I do not think that he really had a puncture that second time. I think that Mercedes was trying to spare themselves and Valtteri the embarrassment of having George come in and not only overtake Valtteri twice, but win the race. Like, I think that they were like, all right, like, George showed what he needed to show. He'll win a race. But, well, because that's the thing, is he was already confirmed to be stuck at Williams for the next year. So I think that him winning that race would have made it already made a world of problems for Toto Wolff, but it would have been exponentially more had he won that race, in my opinion.
But the thing is, then why didn't? So what? He needed to promote George into that seat to test him, but they were never going to really let.
I don't think he wanted to promote.
Benefit?
I don't think he wanted to promote him into that seat to test him regardless. Because I think Toto knew. I think he was. I think now again we're deep in tinfoil hat territory. We don't actually.
Why didn't he just then why did he actively negotiate with Claire Williams to promote George? Why didn't he just say George has a contract and stuff and or come on down?
Well, because I think that I think that that everybody wanted it to be George so bad that he couldn't promote him. He couldn't not promote him for that race, including because like I think George was starting to get fed up with his current situation, and so I think Toto was like, this will be a good holdover for George. I also think like it would have been kind of crazy for him to not let George take the seat in that situation. Now, maybe he stayed where he was because he was in the Williams contract. In my opinion, this is pre-cost cap era. You're telling me they couldn't buy him out of that contract? Be for real.
It would have been $5 million.
$5 million is what Toto Wolff. That's the change in Toto Wolff's couch. Like that is such a negligible amount of money. Again, pre-cost cap era. And I think that they kept Valtteri because Lewis wanted to keep Valtteri and Lewis was their priority.
Yeah.
And this isn't me making this up. Lewis came out and said publicly, I want to keep Valtteri.
No, for sure.
I think that I think that the contract situation was a convenient excuse to push it off another year. And then Toto had to go to Lewis and be like, listen, you're my priority, but we're gonna lose George. Like you're not immortal. Like you are gonna retire one day and we're gonna lose George if we don't promote him.
And the thing is, we know the Christian order left George, and we know that George actually would have been in the Checo seat if it wasn't for the fact that Toto promoted him. Like we know this.
Exactly. So that's my secure conspiracy theory, and it plays in well with like the promotion demotion conspiracy because again, it again even justifying keeping Valtteri after that race as it happened was an impossible task. But imagine having to justify it when if he won. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but didn't everyone basically treat that race as a win for him anyways?
Yes, but for I just feel like it got much less attention than it would have if George had ended up winning in the end.
Maybe. Are we gonna try and hang this live out until we find out what the stewards say, or?
No, I was actually thinking like I probably should wrap it up because it's 7 p.m. and I have like shit to do before tomorrow.
It's just like I don't understand how it took 45 minutes for that in the steward room. But I'm also like fully aware of the fact that doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna drop like George in the order by any means.
I think it was probably just George and Max like arguing with each other for 38 minutes, and then the other time remaining was the actual meeting.
I just like plainly do not understand. I just like plainly don't understand what there is to like. I mean, okay, if we concede the idea that this is a protest, right? Then you are implicitly deciding that the stewards and the FIA have already once decided that George did nothing wrong, which is an extremely
well, no, but did the stewards
extremely high bar to clear up?
Did the protest never worked, but did the stewards look at it, or because I don't think the race director flagged it at the time?
I guess that would be the thing. But if they didn't note it, then how on earth would you get to a position where somehow a thing that didn't even get noted becomes overturning a race win?
Yeah, that would be I don't think they're going to. I think they're just taking their time because they take their time. They're probably not.
Apparently Antonelli, Piastri, and Leclerc are also in there for a safety car infringement, but nobody really knows what the hell that's about.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're probably just I don't know. They're doing whatever it is whatever the fuck it is they do. I doubt. I mean, the protests almost never work.
Do we want to give a penalty to everybody in Nico Hülkenberg is somehow P4?
No.
But like that is actually what you would see if you did this. Like if everyone who theoretically could get penalized. So we're waiting for the Red Bull protest against Russell, safety car infringements for Antonelli, Piastri, Ocon, Leclerc, Sainz, Gasly, and Stroll. Ocon erratic driving signs, McLaren driver's collision, and an Ollie barely rejoined at turn 14.
So they've got a lot going on.
This is all from Chris Medland. All of my info is from Medland. I think he's the best F1 journalist. I think that's like pretty undeniable.
Yeah, I would say I would have previously said Andrew Benson, but now everyone hates him because he gave a false report about Lance Stroll that I personally don't feel was a false report, but
Yep.
I hesitate to everyone hates him right now. But honestly, that's the sign of a good reporter is that everyone hates you. So
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Medland is, I think, a better quarterballer than Benson, but you know.
probably. He's certainly more Andrew Benson is like more of a traditional journalist. Like he's not really in the breaking news game, if that makes sense. Like Chris Medland is for sure a better Twitter follow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just the thing is that like that is actually what I care about from this experience. Is he was going to tell me that Twitter news works faster.
I give Andrew Benson a lot of credit. I think because he was the first one to really not beat around the bush, the Christian Horner stuff and was like, we have sources. It was sexual harassment. She's gonna sue him. Like the Austrians are supporting her. Like, and they're in employment court right now. So it seems like he was accurate in that reporting.
Yeah, that kind of thing though is like I just feel like an independent journalist is never going to get that kind of thing. Like you need to give that to
No, definitely not.
Somebody who actually has like a real journalistic
no, and also putting that under
around them.
Right. Well, and putting that kind of shit under the BBC banner does matter because you know that there are processes in place where like if he says he has an anonymous source, like somebody else has verified that, right? Like his editor or you know what I mean? Like whereas
the BBC is not going to slander Ginger Spices. Which Spice Girl is Horner married to?
Ginger, I think.
Okay, yeah. The BBC is not going to slander Ginger Spice's husband.
Right, exactly. And well, yeah, and they also like they're going to dot their I's and cross their T's.
Yeah, for sure. But also, again, we have to refer to Christian Horner by his proper title, which is Mr. Ginger Spice.
Oh, I hate him so much. It's coming. His day will come. And I will be there waiting like a little vulture circling.
Who do we think is going to be the next team principal at Red Bull next year?
Hammerschmidt.
Because I don't think Jonathan Whaley will go back because he'll be an Audi because he's an Audi, and I think that'll be actually fairly good for him.
Yeah, well, and he can't. The timing doesn't like work. Yeah. Someone said Seb. I don't know about. I mean, maybe I could see it, but I also think that Seb is gonna. I think that Seb will probably actually come back in either working for the FIA or a team But
doesn't he feel much more like the helmet Marco and not the team principal? Like, I don't think Seb wants to go to 24 races. I think he'd much rather.
But the helmet
driver development program.
But the helmet Marco is more travel because you have to go to like all this fucking karting bullshit and like every series to ever exist. Like Marco does more travel than Horner does. But I think that Seb will.
But the thing is, all the travel's in Europe, so it's fine. He never has
That's
to.
true.
He never has to get on a plane.
That's true.
It's dangerous for him. Switzerland.
Yeah, that's true. He is very central. I think that Seb will come back in some capacity, but I think that it will be 5 to 10 years down the line once his kids are attending some fancy Swiss boarding school and it like he doesn't have that like um because I get like his kids are young. So like he wants to be home whatever, but like kids grow up. Like I feel like once the kids are a little bit older and like again like at boarding school doing their own thing, he'll be a little bit more willing to travel than he is right commit to like a travel schedule than he is right now because he doesn't want to commit to being away that much at the current moment in time. But like once the kid like in 10 years when his kids are out of the house, you know, that's a lot less of a big deal because like once it's just him and Hannah, like she can come with him a lot. Like it's also like less of a
I mean, do we think it's going to take 10 years for Seb to be sick of his kids?
probably not, if we're honest. It's also so funny that the don't get me wrong, like I think he's probably a good dad. Who knows? I don't know this man. But the hilarious
what you think is what you think his alpaca farming isn't getting in the way of his fatherhood?
maybe the children are also tending to the alpacas with him. But I it's so funny to me that he was like, it's not worth being, or like his reason for retiring was it's not worth being away from my kids to trundle around at the back, which is hilarious because the implication is that it is worth being away from them to win. At least
the
they
funny
know.
thing is, I think he's entirely correct in that. Of course, how successful you are matters.
Right. Of course. He's like, I'm not gonna be away from my kids to be fucking miserable. But it's just so funny that everyone was like, oh, like it's so sweet. He wants to be a dad. I'm like, well, that's not really what he said.
Yeah, if Max had retired after 2023 and they had gone to Seb and say, "Hey, you want to drive the RB19?" I feel like the answer is the RB20. I feel like the answer would have been yes, please.
Of course it would have been. But I will say, we gotta get off live. But final point, my obligatory complaint, that can you imagine if a woman had a child and then committed to the schedule of being a Formula One driver, she would get absolutely flamed for being a terrible parent. Like, it's just such a even like not to defend Kelly Piquet, but I'm about to do that. People love to make nasty comments at her all the time, being like, "Where's your child?" Like blah 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 when she goes to a race, and like, who knows? Like maybe fucking the Penelope is there. Like we don't know. We're not. Hopefully, I pray not like stalking this child. But I'm like,
yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that was just it's like, just because the kid isn't on camera, like, do we think the kid wants to be in the garage?
right?
Assuming that's where Kelly Piquet is, for the sake of this argument, like,
Yeah.
do we think the kid wants to be there as opposed to I don't know anywhere else that they would actually have more fun? Remember when they did this about fucking Leo Leclerc?
Oh my
and
God. How he's being abused.
He was left alone during the race. And it's like, do we know that? Or is there just somebody in the hotel room, feeding this kid treats?
Right. Like,
driving.
number one, like, I'm sure that one of the million people that work for Charles Leclerc was checking on the dog. Also, we don't, and number two, that was so funny to me because I'm like, um, you realize that most people leave their dogs alone for like a substantial period of the day because they have fucking jobs, right? Like that's
my dog didn't get to go for a piss from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day.
right, because you have a job. That's how most normal people.
From the second that we left the house in the morning to go to school to when I would get back, I would immediately take him for a walk.
Animal abuse. SMH. No, it's so funny. Leo does live a better, and they're like, a Grand Prix is no place for an animal. Like they're dragging him around the world. I'm like, number one, Charles is flying private. So like that's a non-factor. And number two, why are we acting like Charles Leclerc is Leo Leclerc and Alex are sitting in the grandstand? You know what I mean? Like they're in the air-conditioned Ferrari motorhome. Like, yes, a Grand Prix is no place for a dog, but like they're not at a Grand Prix in the same way that like you or I would attend one. Like that is just simply not what's happening. And again, like Alex is clearly there to like be the primary caretaker of the dog while Charles is fucking working. Like it's so the Leo thing to me is like it reminds me it's so the Leo thing to me is like it reminds me it's very much the Taylor Swift private jet discourse and I'm like you guys want something on this motherfucker so bad. You're reaching.
Yeah, I mean, the absolute funniest thing is that if Taylor Swift ever tried to fly commercial, you do realize that the entire internet would cancel her for the mass delay that it caused that flight.
Taylor Swift attended.
If Taylor Swift rocked up to fucking Newark Airport to try and catch the Newark to LA,
there would be a national security incident. Like they would have to, like
no flight would fly out of there for 7 hours, and everyone would cancel her for that.
Taylor Swift attended a wedding in New Jersey, and there so many people flocked to Sea Isle that they had to call in the National Guard. And you think that this bitch can fly commercial like BFFR? And also, listen, I don't like private jets any more than anyone else does, but every single like the way people act like Taylor Swift is the only person in the world who's flying a private jet that much is absolutely insane. Like every 75% of the F1 drivers are flying private most of the time. Every single billionaire is flying like everyone who has the ability and financial acumen to is flying a private jet. But also in Taylor Swift's case, it's a particularly ridiculous discourse because it's like, again, she would cause the airport would have to be shut down. Like there's no way that she could just pop up to gate, fucking 15 at LaGuardia. Like that's just not a realistic expectation.
When do we think the last time Taylor Swift flew a commercial flight was?
Probably like Red era, I would say.
You think you still think by Red, even after Dear John?
Yeah, maybe that era. It's hard to tell, but I feel like she wasn't quite as like crazy famous during that era. But at the same time, because you can do the thing because like celebrities aren't you can do the thing where like you pay extra to have them like you go through security separately. They drive you right up to the plane to not have to like interact with like the public at the airport, so to say. But what would happen is someone would see Taylor Swift sitting in first class, be like, "Oh my god, Taylor Swift is on my flight." And then when that flight it's actually the problem would be at the airport the flight landed at. They would probably have to be fucking diverted. Oh, all right, let me get off live.
It doesn't appear like we're getting a decision by the time this is happening. So, well, let's see what happens.
All right, I'm ending.
If they steal 2 goddamn race wins from George Russell in a